Chapter 454, Joining Forces to Kill. Chapter 454, Joining Forces to Kill. A resolute intent flickered through Hang Qiuyu's eyes as he turned to flee. Humph! Su Zimo harumphed coldly and caught up to Hang Qiuyu with a few huge strides. He extended his right hand and punched heavily towards the latter's back. Boom! A gigantic fist that resembled a large seal descended from the skies. Instantly, spirit qi exploded with a resounding bang in a terrifying manner. Hang Qiuyu caught sight of it from the side of his eyes and was terrified. If he was struck by that, he wouldn't survive even if he had 10 lives. Sword escape. Keeping his cool in the situation, Hang Qiuyu shouted softly and the sword qi within him surged out rampantly. Like an unsheathed sword, he flashed and turned into a streak of light, fleeing into the distance. His speed had already crossed the limits. This was a secret skill of sword sect that was similar to blood escape but lasted for a shorter time. Naturally, the side effects were much less as well. The gigantic seal above was about to descend. However, Hang Qiuyu's sudden speed burst made it such that the seal was about to miss. Hang Qiuyu was delighted. He could already see the sealers charging over. As long as he could withstand another few breaths, the situation would change entirely. At that moment, the sound of a bowstring being pulled sounded in Hang Qiuyu's ears. Pang! 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 He turned slightly and looked towards his back. However, the sight of what was coming scared him out of his wits. Su Zimo was right behind him, shifting like a shadow as his eyes shone with a demonic glint. With a surging killing intent, the former's bones and tendons sounded and his arm expanded multiple inches under the intense stretching. How was that the arm of a human? It was clearly the trunk of a primordial divine elephant. Tearing through the firmament, it seemed like it could smash the stars and destroy the void as it caught up to Hang Qiuyu and slammed down heavily. There was nowhere to escape. In the blink of an eye, Hang Qiuyu dug out another shiny silver circlet from his storage bag and twisted his body, pushing it fiercely towards the incoming fist. Boom! A deafening bang that shook the heavens and earth sounded. As though he was struck by lightning, the sounds of bones cracking could be heard coming from Hang Qiuyu's entire arm. Poof! He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying, his entire face palely yellow. Although he managed to hang onto his life with the use of a Incarnate spirit weapon, he fainted on the spot and laid motionlessly on the ground in a bad condition. By now, the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects were dead, injured or have escaped. Demoness Ji was the only one standing not far away watching everything in astonishment. She finally understood why Su Zimo had to alter his appearance and even transform his body so as to hide his identity. After this battle, there was a high chance that he would offend the entire cultivation world. Disregarding those that were severely injured and crippled, there were 7 paragons who died in his hands. At that moment, Demoness Ji did not know that with malevolent earth sects Shuiyang who died in the fog valley outside Xiantian city, there were a total of 8 paragons who died in Su Zimo's hands. Once his identity was exposed, there was a high chance he would be hunted by the experts of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects. Although the world was huge, there wasn't a place where he was absolutely safe. Of course, right now, the most important thing for Su Zimo to consider was how he was going to survive. The sealers had already arrived beneath the human emperor's palace. Among them, Sword Sect and Snowdrift Sect sealers took their respective successors and left the battlefield first to try and heal them. However, 5 sealers filled with killing intents and exuded terrifying auras had already surrounded Su Zimo. They were from Purple Firmament Sect, Clear Wind Temple, Illusion Fiend Cult, Chaos Essence Sect and Formless Monastery. Since their paragons were already dead, they had no other choice but to make a move and kill Su Zimo. Your embarrassment has turned into anger? Su Zimo laughed and surveyed his surroundings with mocking eyes. Since they were no match for me one-on-one, they came at me together. After they were defeated, even their sealers are joining forces. Fufufu, that's all there is to the three great factions. Bastard of Divine Phoenix Island, your provocations mean nothing to us. You are still going to die. Purple Firmament Sect Sealer had a calm tone and he was unmoved. Ha! Su Zimo sneered, old asshole, you think too highly of yourself. I merely wanted to see how shameless cultivators of Purple Firmament Sect were. Bastard, since you're not from our race, you are our common enemy. Clear Wind Temple Sealer waved the Horsedale whip in his hands and hollered. Amitba. Formless Monastery Sealer said grimly, Patron, you have no one but your stubbornness to blame for your plight today. A tall tree attracts strong winds, that has always been the case throughout history. Hee hee. Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer laughed sinisterly. You guys from the Immortal and Buddhist sects are truly hypocritical, always finding all sorts of excuses for your actions. I'll let you understand today that the reason why we're joining hands is to murder you because you are talented. Murder me? Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and his blood chi exploded. Despite the fact that he was facing 5 sealers, his aura climbed once more as he yelled, let's see if you guys have what it takes. He was looking down on 5 golden cores as a Foundation establishment cultivator. Regardless of the outcome of the battle, his words alone were enough to set the cultivators watching from afar in shock with racing hearts. At that moment, all the paragons seemed absolutely inferior. Bang! Boom! Boom! Right then, a sudden sound came from within the human emperor's palace that caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. Everyone subconsciously looked up. A gigantic cave appeared at the center of the human emperor's palace. It was pitch black, mysteriously dark and let out waves of terrifying might. The entrance to the human emperor's palace had appeared. This meant that the human emperor's palace has already silently acknowledged someone as a successor. Attack! The 5 sealers shouted and attacked together with a tacit understanding. None of them could sit by and watch Su Zimo enter the human emperor's palace to receive the inheritance. They had to kill him right here. If Su Zimo were to die, the human emperor's palace would either disappear or pick a new successor. There was no way the human emperor's palace would leave its inheritance to a corpse. Die! Purple Firmament Sect Sealer roared and waved his sleeves, causing the endless purple chi that surrounded him to condense into a gigantic sword that shot toward Su Zimo. The purple sword tore through the air and created a gigantic ravine on the ground, causing the earth to toss over and dust to fly everywhere. Su Zimo had already attained lesser mastery of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness's orifice clearing section. He was also at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment realm. Be it his immortal or demonic cultivation, he had not reached their limits and even in his demon form, his strength was not enough to take on golden cores. If he was faced with a single old sealer, he might have a shot at victory. However, there was no way he could win if all 5 of them attacked at the same time. He had to endure through it. At this life and death moment, Su Zimo's powers were already channeled to their limits and his bloodline surged while his tendons and bones rang together. Demonic chi rumbled around him, forming menacing demon beasts that were lifelike and filled with killing intent. There was a wild bovine with raised horns, a bear demon that was roaring while standing upright, a coiling anaconda, a demon ape with large arms. Roar! Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo puffed his chest and paused for a moment before letting out an earth-shaking roar in the direction of Purple Firmament Sect Sealer. The ancient demons surrounding him roared at the same time. The voids shook, contorting the entire space itself. Su Zimo was like the king of all demons. In the blink of an eye, the world changed. Chapter 455, About to Die. Chapter 455, About to Die. Even the 5 sealers felt a chill upon sensing the malefic aura let out by Su Zimo. This lad must not survive. He was already able to suppress the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment. If he were to obtain the human emperor's inheritance, it was hard to imagine, and they did not dare to either. The stronger the strength and potential displayed by Su Zimo, the more resolved the 5 sealers were to kill him. Scarlet demonic chi rumbled and the lifelike ancient demons charged while howling, biting and slamming towards the incoming purple sword. Bang! 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 The sword tore through the air with endless might and a terrifying sharp edge, defeating the ancient demons that were formed with demonic chi one after another. The purple chi and demonic chi, 2 different powers, collided and corroded one another endlessly. With the dissipation of each demon beast, the scarlet demonic chi surrounding Su Zimo would dim slightly. The purple sword's power was also clearly not as intense as it was initially as its light dimmed. Boom! It was yet another deafening sound. The purple sword collided against the last demon beast. All the demon beasts and demonic chi had dispersed and the purple sword turned into streams of purple chi that returned to the world as well. Su Zimo managed to defend against the full-powered attack of a sealer. Furthermore, he defended against it without taking any damage. Su Zimo panted heavily. This time round, he had expended almost all of his strength. Ever since he arrived, he had been fighting. If not for the fact that he possessed shocking stamina and ferocious blood chi due to his constant cultivation of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, he would have been exhausted long ago. Right now, after defending the sword of purple firmament sect sealer, Su Zimo felt weakness surge into his head and his arms and feet were powerless. He was thoroughly exhausted. If not for the fact that he was constantly surrounded by strong foes, he would have collapsed long ago. After invoking the power of a golden core, there was only a single outcome for a sealer: they would be mercilessly devoured by a dimensional tear in the ancient battlefield. A series of rips appeared behind purple firmament sect sealer as a sinister wind howled in a mysterious manner. Looking over, Su Zimo sneered with mockery in his eyes. Purple firmament sect sealer grit his teeth in indignance. "Bastard, you don't have to be smug. It won't be long before you'll be joining me." "Ha ha ha, arg." It was a tragic cry. His body was shredded into pieces by the dimension, turning into a blood mist as he was devoured cleanly without a corpse left. A moment later, the dimension stabilized and the tear repaired itself. Swash! A silver beam descended from the skies in a frightening manner. Clear Wind Temple's sealer struck with his horsetail whip and 3,000 silver threads extended countlessly, turning into a massive silver rod that slammed down at Su Zimo's head violently. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and reached out with his right hand, grabbing the incoming silver rod. Bang! There was a dull sound of defeat when the rod and hand collided. Although he managed to grip the silver rod tightly, the flesh on his palm had already exploded and a frightening power surged into his body. His organs were ruptured upon receiving the impact and cracks appeared on the surface. Poof! Su Zimo's gaze dimmed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Thankfully, I have this blood-bone palm. Otherwise, my arm would have been destroyed with this sealer's attack." He lamented internally in gratefulness. "Ha, naive." Suddenly, Clear Wind Temple's sealer chuckled with a look of ridicule. Su Zimo's expression changed. Suddenly, the silver rod spread open from his palm and the 3,000 threads whipped him on the back viciously. Piak! Flashes of blood appeared, accompanied by the sounds of bones cracking. Su Zimo's face turned pale as his knees buckled, almost kneeling on the ground. The change was extremely sudden. The horsetail whip seemed like it was alive and sentient and shifted between flexibility and toughness instantly. Su Zimo's back was whipped into a mess of flesh and blood, as though countless knives were gliding across. The fabric of his torn clothes stuck onto the surface in a frightening manner. His collarbone was broken and hung out in an exposed manner, looking extremely shocking. At that moment, Su Zimo experienced another terrifying aspect of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness. Its vitality was shocking. If it was any other cultivator or living being, they would have long died after their organs were ruptured and they suffered such severe impacts. However, at this moment, Su Zimo could still stand upright. He could sense his injuries healing slightly with every single breath, except that it was at an extremely slow speed due to his serious injuries. "You're still not dead?" Clear Wind Temple Sealer's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Su Zimo, who stood upright slowly. His attack was more than enough to split the body of any Foundation establishment cultivator. However, he did not expect Su Zimo to stand up once more. "What a pity, I just need a little more." The sealer sighed indignantly. However, he no longer had a chance. A dimensional tear appeared and devoured him straight, even his horsetail whip was shred into pieces. Buzz! Almost at the same time, the sound of a sword buzzing rang out. "Go!" Chaos Essence Sect Sealer had attacked, pointing his flying sword toward Su Zimo. A streak of light appeared instantly. It was the simplest as well as the most effective killing move of cultivators. The moment Chaos Essence Sect Sealer struck, Su Zimo sensed a warning in his mind. Without hesitating, in a flash, Su Zimo grit his teeth and dodged to the side. Poof! A stream of blood spurted out. He was still a step too slow. The sword pierced his left chest and shot out of his body. Although it missed his heart, a penetration through his lung was enough to be fatal. Instantly, Su Zimo had difficulty breathing. He coughed endlessly, as though there was a fire burning in his throat, and his body convulsed for a split moment. This time round, the injury was way too severe. This was the first time he had experienced such a serious injury throughout his cultivation journey. Although his regeneration capabilities were strong, there was a limit to them. It was unknown if he could recover from an injury as such. Furthermore, this was in the ancient battlefield and nobody would accord him the chance to do so. Buzz! In midair, the flying sword turned and retraced its path right after penetrating Su Zimo's chest. It was a clear sign of how advanced the Sealer of Chaos Essence Sect was in his sword handling skills. An unprecedented feeling of death arrived. Even without his spirit perception, Su Zimo knew that he was extremely close to death and would definitely die if he could not dodge that sword. Bang! Stomping on the ground, he exerted his final bit of strength and leaped forcefully to the side. Shing! A flash of blood appeared and a throbbing pain that struck his marrow surged from his abdomen. The blood drained from Su Zimo's face as his knees buckled, almost collapsing onto the ground. By now, he was completely exhausted and was severely injured. It was extremely lucky that he was able to avoid fatal damage. That sword sliced a bloody hole through his abdomen. Su Zimo clutched it with his hands immediately to stop his intestines from spilling out. Fresh blood gushed out, seeping through his fingers and flowing down, slowly soaking his clothes with a heavy stench. In the blink of an eye, he was already filled with blood. His head was spinning and he swayed while he felt his vitality leaving his body in an irreversible manner. "Am I about to die?" Su Zimo murmured softly. Suddenly, his vision blurred, as if a bloody figure appeared with an unparalleled might. Even after many years, that figure remained etched in his memories. There was no way for him to erase that scene and it felt clear as though it was yesterday. Chapter 456, Forgive My Inability to Comply. Chapter 456, Forgive My Inability to Comply. Nobody thought that Divine Phoenix Island would have produced a paragon as such. Yet, it's a pity that he has to die beneath the human emperor's palace. He died a worthwhile death trading the lives of 7 other paragons and a couple of sealers. The cultivators watching that blood-stained and swaying figure from afar had complicated expressions as they discussed in hushed whispers with looks of pity. That lone figure looked pitiable and tragic. The cultivators knew that Divine Phoenix Island's successor was about to die and no one could save him. Su Zimo was indeed in a disastrous situation. His left chest was punctured with blood gushing out, his collarbone was smashed and broken while his abdomen had a frightening wound that was so bad his intestines would have spilled out if he wasn't clutching it with his hands. Su Zimo could feel his vitality draining from him. Fresh blood was still flowing. His injuries were not showing any signs of healing or recovery. This meant that his injuries had already exceeded the limits of his regeneration capabilities. The sealers of Formless Monastery and Illusion Fiend cult had yet to make their moves. Even if they were to stand by the sidelines and watch idly, before long, he would still run out of blood and die all the same. Su Zimo's head was giddy and his vision blurred, as if a familiar blood-colored figure flashed before him. Miss Dai. Instinctively, he called out softly. There was no response. The figure in front turned slightly and raised her brows, glancing at him with endless worry and pity. A faint fragrance wafted over and Su Zimo was momentarily invigorated as he struggled to open his eyes and look over. After a moment of daze, he opened his mouth but failed to say anything. His head slumped down with evident disappointment. It was not Dayu. It was Demoness G. He had lost too much blood and his vision was blurry. Coupled with the fact that he had been yearning about her for years, Su Zimo mistook Demoness G's pink-colored dress as a blood-red color. She has already left long ago and won't be coming back. I still couldn't catch up to her in the end. There's no more chance left. Heis. Su Zimo sighed deeply and his body swayed. His eyelids were heavy and gradually, his consciousness was gone as he fell into the endless abyss. Suddenly, a voice sounded in his ears, jolting Su Zimo's mind and pulling him back from the abyss of death. Seniors, please let him off. It was Demoness G's voice and she was right in front of him. Demoness, get lost. Formless Monastery Sealer walked over slowly and hollered with a terrifying aura. Even if you guys don't attack, he won't be able to survive. What's so bad about leaving him with a complete corpse? Demoness G did not leave and her voice sounded once more, the Buddhist sect's advocate kindness, so why are you so bent on killing him? The only way to ensure that nothing goes wrong is to kill him personally. Formless Monastery Sealer was unmoved and he said with a shimmering gaze, Demoness, if you don't get lost, I'll kill you together with him. A moment later, Demoness G's voice sounded once more. Although it was calm and firm, it was shocking. Forgive my inability to comply. Those words revealed a determination. It was an unwavering conviction to not back off despite knowing that it would result in death. Su Zimo's expression changed. She was facing a sealer. This was a sealer who was completely enraged and could kill her with a single move. Su Zimo did not expect that given the circumstances, Demoness G would stand forth and defend him with reckless abandon unyieldingly. What a foolish woman. His lips shifted and his voice was as soft and inaudible as a mosquito. Very well then. Formless Monastery Sealer nodded expressionlessly as killing intent surged in his eyes. Since you wish to die, I'll fulfill your wishes. Boom. He channeled his golden core and burst forth with his full power. It was an instant attack with a massive rise in aura. Formless Finger. Reaching out with his finger, he tapped in Demoness G's direction. Instantly, heaven and earth shook. How was that a finger? It was clearly a heavenly piercing pillar that streaked through the void with unbridled might, charging over as though it wanted to crush Demoness G into smithereens. Su Zimo clenched his teeth and wanted to block the move for Demoness G. However, he was too severely injured and he had no strength left to budge. Demoness G blinked her eyes and a ripple appeared in her beautiful eyes, sending forth a bewitching beam that entered the eyes of Formless Monastery Sealer. Removing her veil, Demoness G revealed a flawless face and smiled charmingly. It was a charm that could topple the world. Even the cultivators who were watching from afar were stunned and drooled with agape mouths, let alone Formless Monastery Sealer who was right opposite. She did not merely use the bewitching eye. That was the limit of the pure Maiden Sutra's powers. Although Formless Monastery Sealer was a golden core, he had not cultivated the secret skills of Diamond Monastery and was unable to counter the pure Maiden Sutra perfectly. His heart wavered for a moment and the power of Formless Finger weakened. Go! At the same time, Demoness G sent forth a ribbon that shone with a bright spirit light, colliding against the incoming Formless Finger. Bang! There was a deafening sound. Demoness G's expression changed starkly as her petite figure shuddered, stumbling in retreat repeatedly. With every single step back, she would spit out a mouthful of blood that was extremely striking. Not everyone could endure the full-powered attack of sealers like Su Zimo. If not for the fact that Formless Monastery's sealer was distracted and the power of Formless Finger was diminished, Demoness G would have been torn apart and died. Even so, by the time she staggered backwards to Su Zimo's side, she was already severely injured and on the brink of death. A series of sinister tears appeared behind Formless Monastery's sealer. Humph! With a grim expression, he sneered, "I'll give you guys a large gift before my death so that you two lovebirds can go to hell together." Before his sentence was finished, a stream of fire burst forth from the Formless Monastery sealer's finger and arrived before the two of them. His flames were fiery red and there was even a shade of gold mixed within, letting off a terrifying aura. True fire. True fires came above level 3 spirit fires. Only golden cores who possessed fire spirit roots could cultivate true fires that could incinerate all Foundation Establishment cultivators and even burn pure-blooded ferocious beasts at Foundation Establishment realm to ashes. Su Zimo's eyes twitched furiously. He was a weapon refinement master as well and had mastery over flames. Naturally, he knew of how powerful true fires were. Previously, none of the sealers produced true fires because they were not cultivators with fire spirit roots. Heaving a deep breath of air, Su Zimo used all his might to push away Demoness G who was in front of him while bellowing deeply, "Get away!" Swoosh! The flames landed on Su Zimo and surged, burning his entire body. In the blink of an eye, he was a man engulfed in flames. Chapter 457, Hand of a Divine Spirit. Chapter 457, Hand of a Divine Spirit. ARR, ARR, ARR. Su Zimo hunched over with his eyes tightly shut. He was in immeasurable pain as his throat let out a hoarse cry. The true fire burned furiously and his body convulsed. Even his flesh sizzled with crackling sounds as his flesh was burnt black in a terrifying sight. In the fire, Su Zimo's face was faintly visible and he was in such deep pain that his features were contorted to an unrecognizable degree. Demoness G's heart ached when she saw the state he was in and her eyes misted. Cough. Her internal injuries acted up and she coughed out another 2 mouthfuls of black blood. There were even pieces of her ruptured organs and it looked terrifying. To think that I would still end up dying here. Demoness G's eyes dimmed and she sounded wistful. Her organs were severely damaged after receiving the full blow of a sealer and her vitality was rapidly draining. Unless she was in possession of some supreme methods, she would be dead for sure. However, in the ancient battlefield, golden cores were already the mightiest figures. How could anyone save her? How could that be? Suddenly, a soft exclamation filled with disbelief sounded not far away. It was the voice of illusion fiend Cult's sealer. Instinctively, Demoness G followed the sealer's gaze and looked toward Su Zimo once more. At that moment, the true fire burning him had grown much smaller than before and was even showing signs of extinguishing. Demoness G's mouth was slightly agape and her eyes were filled with shock. Although Su Zimo was almost charcoal black by now and was billowing with smoke, the flames surrounding him were indeed getting weaker. Or rather, they were reversing. The fiery flames trembled slightly, as if they were directed toward Su Zimo's right hand by some mysterious force, entering his blood-bone palm. Apart from Su Zimo, no one else knew or could explain what was happening to him. Initially, his injuries were way too severe that they had exceeded his regeneration capabilities. As such, he could not recover and was bleeding the entire time. If not for the true fire, he would have died of blood loss. However, the flames of the true fire had cauterized his wounds and stopped the bleeding temporarily, saving his life. At the same time, a mysterious change was happening to the blood-bone palm under the burn of the true fire. It was as though a seal had been undone, summoning a hidden power within Su Zimo that was devouring the true fire on him without any care. Before the true fire could threaten Su Zimo, the blood-bone palm had already consumed a large portion of it. It could be said that through some freak turn of events, the true fire had instead saved Su Zimo's life. A terrifying aura was growing, shrouding around the blood-bone palm. Ta! 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 The sound of footsteps filled with killing intent surged over in a suffocating manner. Demoness G's heart sank. Formless Monastery Sealer was already devoured by the Dimensional Tear and Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer was the only one left. The flames on Su Zimo's body had yet to extinguish and he stood on the spot like a burnt charcoal, his eyes were shut and his aura was weak. Demoness G grit her teeth and pushed herself up with her trembling arms. After multiple failures, she finally struggled to stand up before staggering in front of Su Zimo. Although it was a simple motion, she had expended the final bit of her strength. Her body swayed unsteadily, as if a single gust of wind could knock her over. However, when she raised her head and looked towards Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer who was striding over murderously, her eyes were filled with unprecedented resolve. She knew that her injuries were already beyond the point of no return, but it was not the case for Su Zimo. The Human Emperor's Palace. That might be Su Zimo's only chance. Multiple signs had already indicated that Su Zimo was this generation's successor for the Human Emperor's Palace. As long as he entered it, he might be able to survive. Of course, that was only a possibility. Nobody knew what was inside the Human Emperor's Palace. The footsteps vanished. Arriving in front of Demoness G, Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer paused with a cold expression. The way you're protecting him, don't tell me that this bastard is your tripod? Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer asked slowly. The way he looked at Demoness G was filled with mockery and ridicule. So what if he is? Her face turned darker and grimmer and the vitality exuding from her body was almost negligible. If not for her thread of determination that was keeping her going, she would have collapsed long ago. Ha ha ha. It was as tough the sealer of Illusion Fiend Cult had just heard the greatest joke in the world. Even the sealers of Overlord Palace and Cloud Rain Sect frowned, looking at Demoness G in disbelief. Foolish, how foolish. After laughing, he shook his head regrettably. To think that this generation's pure maiden of the fiend sects would be a lovelorn fool, picking a cultivator as a tripod. How laughable. Demoness G pursed her lips and her eyelids were getting heavier. She could no longer hear the sealer clearly, it merely felt as though her ears were buzzing with noises close and far as her consciousness faded. The reason why you're fighting with your life is to buy time for this little bastard to enter the Human Emperor's Palace. Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer sneered, however, it's a pity that both of you will have to die. Today, I'll kill you so that you don't bring about disgrace for Pure Maiden Sect as well as the Fiend Sects. The moment he said that, the sealer's eyes shone with killing intent and he whipped out a shimmering flexible sword from his waist. Swoosh! With a fling, the sword turned straight. Even against two helpless Foundation establishment cultivators who were on the brink of death, the sealer had no intention of showing mercy as he burst forth with his power as a golden core and thrust forward. That attack was enough to skewer the both of their heads together. The sword chi was extremely cold and possessed wild might. Demoness G could hold on no longer as she collapsed to the side. Suddenly, an arm reached out and held up her body. The next moment, Demoness Ji caught sight of a figure through her blurred vision. Although he was burnt charcoal black and was disfigured, she could recognize him. Those eyes burned with a bloodshot gleam as though they wanted to devour someone. Suddenly, Su Zimo reached out with his right arm. Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer's eyes constricted in shock. There was no flesh on his palm and it was just a scarlet bone that was burning with thin flames, emitting a terrifying aura that seemed as though it could incinerate the heavens and oceans, annihilating all living beings. It was as though it was the hand of a divine spirit that let out a shuddering aura. Even the sealers who were watching from nearby as well as the cultivators watching from afar felt chills run down their spines, let alone Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer. Some of the cultivators could not endure that might and fell to the ground on the spot, shivering in fear. A feeling of inferiority grew in the hearts of many cultivators. The blood-bone palm reached out for the flexible sword. Pitter-patter. Pitter-patter. Before it could reach the blood-bone palm, the sword was melted into liquid steel and dripped onto the ground. A perfect-grade spirit weapon was destroyed just like that. The sealer had nowhere to run with the dimensional tear appearing in his back. In his eyes, he could only see a burning palm arriving with a flame that grew more and more intense. Chapter 458, Divine Phoenix Bone. Chapter 458, Divine Phoenix Bone. Right in front of everyone, that burning blood-bone palm penetrated the Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer's body with ease. It did not pause at all, similar to how a blazing steel sword would pierce a thin veil. In the blink of an eye, Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer was devoured by the flames. The next moment, he turned into ashes. A golden core was incinerated to ashes by that terrifying flame in less than a second without any corpse left. Complete silence ensued within 1,000 meters from the human emperor's palace. All the cultivators felt an inexplicable sense of repression as their chests stuffed up, making breathing difficult. "Look!" someone from the crowd exclaimed. Without the need for any reminders, everyone's gazes landed on that blood-bone palm. At that moment, the void around the blood-bone palm began to distort after being burned by the intense flames. A series of tears appeared, gusting with sinister winds. The rules of the ancient battlefield had been violated, triggering a dimensional tear. Pust! Everyone gasped. This meant that the flames on that palm had already reached the level of a golden core's power. A sinister aura gushed out from the dimensional tear. The flames on the blood-bone palm flickered against the sinister wind, lasting for a moment before finally extinguishing. Right after, all the cultivators watched with alarmed gazes. The dimensional tears that appeared around the blood-bone palm devoured it but spat it back out. It was spat out intact. The ripping power of the dimensional tear was incomparably strong to begin with and could tear the bodies of golden cores or even nascent souls apart. The moment one was dragged away by the dimensional tear, they would endure an incredibly horrific wild current of the void. Even nascent souls or void reversions would have their essence spirits destroyed without any corpses remaining. Legend has it that only mighty patriarchs could endure the wild currents of the void and travel through it freely. Yet, the dimensional tear could not devour that blood-bone palm. After it was taken in and washed by the wild currents, it was still intact. What exactly was that? That was not the bone of a human being. Divine Phoenix Island successor, blood-bone palm flames, all the clues seemed to lead towards a certain truth. Could the legend be for real? Sword Sect Sealer shuddered uneasily, as though he had just recalled something frightening. What legend? The other sealers looked towards him one after another. Do you guys know of the origin of Divine Phoenix Island? Sword Sect Sealer asked instead. Another sealer replied with a frown, initially, Divine Phoenix Island was just a lone island overseas. Legend has it that in an unknown era long ago, the skies rained with fire and the firmaments collapsed. Among that, a pure-blooded divine phoenix's corpse landed on that island. Thereafter, the island was named as the Divine Phoenix Island. At that point, the sealer suddenly paused. As though he recalled something as well, he was shocked and asked slowly, "You mean to say that legend was too long ago and has always been spread through the mortal world? It was created by storytellers, there's no way it can be true, right?" Another sealer refused to believe it. Phoenixes were definitely divine spirits that were as strong as perfected immortals. In the cultivation world, there had never been accurate records about the existence of divine phoenixes on Tianhuang mainland. Nobody had seen a pure-blooded phoenix, and the only things left were figments of the legends. Prior to this, if anyone said that there was a pure-blooded living being in the world that possessed a might comparable to a perfected immortal, nobody would believe it. But now, the sealers present went silent. Suddenly, Overlord Palace's sealer said, "In the ancient manuals of the fiend sects, there's a legend about the Phoenix race. It said that the Phoenix race is a mighty race that's even comparable in strength to the dragons. They wield the strongest and most frightening flames in the universe and can incinerate all living beings. Male phoenixes are called Fengs while female phoenixes are called Huangs. Pure-blooded phoenixes, also known as undying divine phoenixes, are reborn through nirvana each time they incinerate themselves and become even stronger. Therefore, in Tianhuang mainland, be it in the cultivation or mortal world, there's always the saying of a phoenix undergoing nirvana for a rebirth through flames. That saying is an explanation of the capabilities of the divine phoenixes." Another sealer asked, "What's the difference between the two?" Overlord Palace's sealer replied, "The ancient manuals recorded that phoenixes would always leave something behind during each rebirth. When the undying Feng is bathed in flames, he leaves behind a drop of divine phoenix essence blood. When the undying Huang is bathed in flames, she leaves behind a piece of divine phoenix bone." At that point, everyone felt their hearts skip a beat. They made the connection between this person from the divine Phoenix Island and his blood-bone palm with the terrifying flame that was burning on it. They were close to the truth. "You mean to say that his right hand is actually a piece of the divine Phoenix's bone?" a sealer exclaimed. If that deduction was correct, that divine Phoenix bone would be the greatest treasure throughout Tianhuang mainland or even the cultivation world and was irreplaceable. In that case, it would naturally explain why the dimensional tear was unable to devour that bone and why the wild currents in the void could not destroy it. It would make sense for the divine phoenix bone to be an immortal object. Even a mighty patriarch would be tempted to get his hands on it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sealers had a tacit understanding and set their sights on Su Zimo's right hand. They could not conceal the greed in their eyes. All of them were golden cores reaching the end of their lifespans. Now that they were sent into the ancient battlefield with the successors of their respective sects, it was partly due to the threat that they would be able to provide. On the other hand, all of them harbored thoughts of seeking out opportunities or treasures to increase their lifespans so that they could continue cultivating and break through to the nascent soul realm. Since the divine phoenix bone was an object left behind by the undying Huang's rebirth through nirvana, it would definitely possess unimaginable divine power, and if they could get their hands on it, they might be able to extend their lives. Although Su Zimo was able to kill illusion fiend cult sealer with the blood bone palm, his internal injuries had yet to heal up and his vitality was still draining, almost completely depleted. Demoness G was in a similar condition. To everyone, Su Zimo and Demoness G were two dead people. All they had to consider was how they were going to get their hands on the divine phoenix bone in the ensuing fight after severing Su Zimo's hand. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out from the human emperor's palace's entrance, descending upon Su Zimo. A massive power sucked Su Zimo, causing him to rise slowly. "Go on. If you manage to survive, I hope you can still remember me." Demoness G tilted her head and leaned in Su Zimo's embrace like a weak girl. Although her eyes were filled with sadness and reluctance, she faked a smile nevertheless. Chapter 459, Human Emperor's Palace's Compromise. Chapter 459, Human Emperor's Palace's Compromise. Su Zimo did not say anything, but he did not let go. Throughout history, there would only be a single successor chosen for the Human Emperor's Palace's appearance. Right now, as long as Su Zimo let go of Demoness Ji, he would be able to enter the Human Emperor's Palace rightfully. However, he knew that if he were to let go, she would definitely have no chance of surviving. Su Zimo did not care about the relationship between Demoness Ji and Ji Yaoxue or ponder about what it meant to be her tripod. The only thing he knew was that if Demoness Ji had not sacrificed herself to buy time for him earlier on, he would have been killed by the sealers of Formless Monastery and Illusion Fiend cult and would not have lasted till now. He held on to Demoness Ji obstinately and refused to let go. To the many cultivators, this was a choice that seemed foolish, even stupid. It was precisely because of this reason that the both of them stopped in midair during the rise, unable to head up or down. It was an undeniable rule that the Human Emperor's Palace would only select a single successor. Right now, Su Zimo's choice was challenging the rule of the Human Emperor's Palace, challenging the might of the Human Emperor himself. The sealers were delighted upon seeing that. If Su Zimo were to enter the Human Emperor's Palace successfully, they would miss their chance of seizing the Divine Phoenix Bone. How foolish. He doesn't know what's good for him. A cultivator sneered. Another cultivator shook his head and sighed. To think that Mad Blade would be such a sentimental man. Isn't that right? Not many people would have the courage to make such a choice. If he entered the Human Emperor's Palace, not only would he be able to survive, he would also be able to obtain the Human Emperor's inheritance. Who could resist such a temptation? Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han bit her lips and looked on with a conflicted expression. What did his choice represent? It meant that at this moment, this man was willing to abandon his life and the Human Emperor's inheritance in order to save Demoness Ji. Even if there was only a sliver of hope. As a woman, she felt a tinge of envy towards Demoness Ji from the bottom of her heart. Let go. Demoness Ji frowned deeply, her eyelids were so heavy that she could not make out Su Zimo's face clearly and her frail voice carried a hint of anxiousness. Don't feel guilty. The reason I saved you, is because you saved me before as well. If not for you, I would have been killed by that damned monk long ago. I'm just repaying you right now. There was still no response. Let me go. It was still silent. However, Demoness Ji could sense him hugging her even closer. The both of them hovered in midair in a stalemate with the Human Emperor's Palace. The remaining few sealers were already on their way. The two of them were already at the end of the road with no strength to fight back. Even without releasing their powers as golden cores, the sealers could kill the two of them with just power at the level of Foundation Establishment realm. Die. The first sealer to arrive was from Sword Sect. Buzz. The sound of a sword buzzing rang out and an unparalleled sword beam flashed. Instead of aiming for Su Zimo's vitals, it tried to sever his wrist. Su Zimo looked at that sword without moving. Given his current condition, any Qi refinement warrior would be able to kill him, let alone the sealer of Sword Sect. Swash! The sword beam struck the column of light from the Human Emperor's Palace and created a ripple before vanishing instantly. Su Zimo was unharmed. The sealers were alarmed when they saw that. All of a sudden, as though it was agitated, that column of light shone brightly in a bedazzling manner. Countless beams of light shot forth and instantly penetrated the body of Sword Sect sealer. Poof! 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 Flashes of blood gushed out continuously. The sealer's body was punctured by the illusionary beams of light, and the next moment, he exploded into a blood mist without a corpse left. Upon seeing that, the remaining few sealers were shocked and terrified. Among them, Heavenly Dipper Sect Sealer had already released his secret skill which struck the column of light. The column of light shook and shot forth countless beams once more, engulfing the sealer of Heavenly Dipper sect. That person was rather impressive as a glint of determination flickered through his eyes. Roaring, he released his power as a golden core, wanting to fight against the light beams before him. Bang! He turned into a mist of blood and died on the spot. Although it was only a column of light beneath the human emperor's palace, its might could not be challenged and it was enough to suppress everything, killing with a single touch. The others hurriedly stopped in their tracks and escaped, not daring to linger. They only came to a stop outside the boundaries of the human emperor's palace before turning back to look with fear in their hearts. The man and woman were still hovering in midair within that gigantic column of light, hugging together without separating. The sealers looked grim with indignant expressions. There was no way they could get their hands on the divine phoenix bone given the current situation. Let's wait a little more, there might still be a chance. After a moment, Hollow Monastery's sealer composed himself and said slowly with a shimmering gaze. That's right. Overlord Palace's sealer said in a dark tone, he's only a mere Foundation establishment cultivator and yet he dares to challenge the human emperor's palace? He's bound to fail. If this carries on, the both of them will definitely die. The few sealers nodded in agreement. If the two of them were dead, the human emperor's palace would either disappear or select a new successor. No matter the outcome, the successor of Divine Phoenix Island would lose the protection of the human emperor's palace. At that time, they would have the chance to sever his wrist and fight for the Divine Phoenix bone. Right now, all the sealers had to do was wait. Demoness G leaned in Su Zimo's embrace motionlessly and it was unable to tell if she was dead. Su Zimo's aura was also getting increasingly weaker. Raising his head, he looked at the mysterious entrance of the human emperor's palace and narrowed his gaze with a resolute expression. It was as though he would never relent nor compromise. A long, long time later. Just as Su Zimo was gradually losing his consciousness, a change happened in midair. The two of them started rising slowly, as though they were pulled by something. In the blink of an eye, both of them entered the human emperor's palace and disappeared. There was a deathly silence. Upon seeing that, everyone was dumbfounded and even forgot to breathe. How is that possible? A long time later, Hollow Monastery's sealer murmured to himself with widened eyes and a lost expression. The human emperor's palace actually came to a compromise? Overlord Palace's sealer chuckled bitterly. Since the human emperor's palace was sentient, it naturally possessed the intent of the human emperor. Throughout history, the human emperor had been the strongest emperor and was unparalleled. Since the human emperor's palace represented him, how could it bow down and relent? Furthermore, how could it do so for the sake of a mere Foundation establishment cultivator? If everyone had not seen it for themselves, none of them would have believed it. Was it pity, or was there some other reason? Nobody knew. The entrance of the human emperor's palace closed. Bang! Boom! Boom! The ancient palace shook and dust fell endlessly as it rose into the air slowly, disappearing beyond the horizons of the heavens. The clouds dissipated and the thunderstorm subsided, spilling warm sunlight everywhere. The skies were clear once again. Yet, there was a murky fog in the hearts of all the sealers. Chapter 460, Historic Monster Incarnate. Chapter 460, Historic Monster Incarnate. The human emperor's palace had long disappeared. However, the paragons who managed to survive and the sealers of the super sects looked in its direction for the longest time with conflicted expressions in silence. They felt an inexplicable sense of repression. That man should be dead, right? A long time later, Heavenly Dipper Sect's paragon asked hesitantly. Overlord Palace's Pang Yu nodded. He should be. After a moment, as though he was trying to convince himself, Pang Yu repeated with conviction, he must be. That's right, he's definitely dead. He's already so badly injured. Unless there's some divine method to resurrect the dead and regrow flesh, he's definitely dead for sure. That's right. The human emperor's palace only contains its inheritance, how could there be anything to save his life? Almost at the same time, the remaining paragons heaved a sigh of relief, as if a burden was lifted off their shoulders. All of them looked at ease and smiled gently. The sealers present were expressionless as they exchanged glances, all of them could tell of the worry in the other's eyes. To old people like themselves who had lived for hundreds of years, the reactions and deductions of their juniors felt more like lies to make themselves feel better. Even they were unsure if the successor of Divine Phoenix Island was still alive. That was because nobody knew what was inside the human emperor's palace. It would be fine if the Divine Phoenix Island successor died in the human emperor's palace. If he survived and was reborn. Everything else aside, none of the paragons who had entered the ancient battlefield this time round, Hang Qiuyu, Peng Yu, Monk Zhu Chen and the others included, would be a match for that man. That was because all of those paragons would be fearful. Subconsciously, all of them were hoping that the successor of Divine Phoenix Island would die, instead wishing for his survival so that they could fight him once more. In this battle, the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects were defeated so badly that their confidence was destroyed. Clear Heart Nunnery's sealer murmured, the fact that they're able to produce such a paragon is a clear sign that the light of Providence is shining on them. Could this generation be the rise of Divine Phoenix Island once more? It's probably unsuitable to refer to him as a paragon anymore. That's right. Given his potential, bearing, guts and methods, he can be called a monster incarnate. Not just that, he's a rare monster incarnate throughout history. The few sealers were clear about how much of a stir it would cause once news of this spread to Tianhuang Mainland. The entire cultivation world might be moved because of this. It's all right. Hollow Monastery's sealer said calmly, no matter how strong that lad is, he's only at Foundation Establishment realm. His future is still unknown. Given the firm foundations of our sects, we have rare monster incarnates as well. That's true. If he meets against the legacy disciples of our sects, he shouldn't have much of a chance of winning. Everyone conversed for a little more before separating. The battlefield was left with nothing but a pile of corpses, as though telling a tale of how tragic that battle was. A month later. Xiantian City. The arrival of a piece of news caused a huge uproar. A monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island and this generation's pure maiden of the Fiend sects entered the human emperor's palace and their fates are unknown. Where did you get that news from? It's fake, right? Throughout history, the human emperor's palace has only allowed a single person in. How can both of them enter together? It's absolutely true. A senior brother of mine witnessed it personally. It said that the corpses beneath the human emperor's palace can form a mountain and there are rivers of blood. More than half of the paragons from the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects are dead and some were crippled on the spot. How can that be? Aren't there sealers? The sealers died as well. I heard that at the end of it all, a few sealers tried joining hands to fight the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island and were even killed in return. Wow! What's the name of that person? Mad Blade. In a small little mansion with 2 stories within Elixir Yang sect, Tang Yu stood in front of a window. Her hands were behind her back and she frowned slightly in deep thought. The news of the human emperor's palace was truly shocking indeed. However, what she was more worried about was Su Zimo's situation. The strangest thing was that although she tried scouting for news from multiple sources, nothing returned, as though Su Zimo had vanished into thin air as nobody caught sight of him at all. At the side, Uncle Yang could read Tang Yu's mind and said with a smile, "Young master, you don't have to worry. Given Su Zimo's methods, even if he can't win, he can definitely escape alive." Yes. Tang Yu nodded. I'm not worried about him, but I'm confused. Given his personality, since he chose to fight for the human emperor's palace's inheritance, how come there is no news at all? For certain people, their glamours can never be contained. Ever since he entered Xiantian City, Su Zimo caused an earth-shaking change to the state of the entire place. The 4 mounted bandits were the first to be removed, followed by Poison Sect. Even powerful super sects with formidable foundations such as Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect were swept away by him. How could there be no news of a cultivator that was so aggressive and domineering? Uncle Liang, when I heard that the name of monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island was called Mad Blade, I even suspected that he's Su Zimo. Tang Yu said coldly, both of them make use of sabers and have knowledge of the Sea Calming Manual. Furthermore, they are both at the Tsunami Blood Realm and are at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment. That's impossible. Uncle Liang shook his head. Although both of them use sabers, Su Zimo has his perfect grade blood quencher while this monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island merely used a supreme grade spirit saber. Moreover, it said that this person is extremely tall and bulky and is a burly man with a rough appearance. The two of them differ too much in terms of appearances. Tang Yu nodded. There was truly no way to explain it, although they had their similarities, their differences were even more. Uncle Liang continued, also, although Su Zimo is strong, he isn't at the state where he's able to take down the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects, let alone a couple of sealers as well. Back then, in the Elixir Pool sect ruins, Su Zimo had to take a long time before baiting the sealer of Glass Palace to death. In terms of actual combat strength, Su Zimo was clearly far inferior. However, the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island fought against a couple of sealers and even killed them in return. The difference between them was too great. Tang Yu nodded. No matter what, I hope that fellow Taoist Su can return safely. At the entrance of the mansion, Su Xiaoning hugged her knees and sat on a stone step with a worried expression. There was a pitch-black demon beast beside her. A cold glint shimmered between its half-opened eyes. It was Night Spirit who was guarding Xiaoning. Heis. Sighing gently, Xiaoning murmured, all the cultivators in the city are discussing that monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island and Mad Blade, but there's still no news of brother. I don't even know how he's doing right now. Growl. Night Spirit opened its eyes and yawned listlessly. Xiaoning frowned and asked, you're saying that brother is fine? How do you know that, brother? You've been with me the entire time and you haven't received any news either. Sitting up, Night Spirit extended its paw and gestured in a human-like manner while crying out repeatedly. Xiaoning's eyes widened. While others may not have understood, Xiaoning did. Her heart skipped a beat as she exclaimed, you mean to say that Mad Blade is? Night Spirit gestured with a shushing hand sign. Understanding, Xiaoning clutched her cherry lips immediately. Instantly, the worry on her face disappeared and she grinned, causing her eyes to look like crescent moons in a painting. Chapter 461, Resurrection and Regrowth of Flesh. Chapter 461, Resurrection and Regrowth of Flesh. Hugging the unconscious Demoness Ji into the human emperor's palace, Su Zimo could no longer hold on either and was fainting. He was too badly injured and had lost too much blood. His flesh and skin were burnt to a crisp and his organs were failing. He had already gone beyond his body's regeneration capabilities. If he hadn't cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and possessed shocking vitality, he would have long been dead. In his daze, Su Zimo suddenly felt his hands get lighter. A long time later, he finally snapped out of his stupor. Enduring the immense pain, he turned to his side with extreme difficulty. Demoness Ji, who was initially lying in his embrace, had disappeared. Bang! Before he had time to think, his body shuddered and he collapsed onto the cold, hard ground with a throbbing headache. Su Zimo struggled to sit up, wanting to look for Demoness Ji. However, he caught sight of a hazy fog that was approaching him from not far away. The fog billowed and surged over. Just as it was about to arrive before him, the gray fog condensed into a hazy figure. Although the person's face was old, he was energetic and his eyes had a wise, deep look, as if he had seen through everything in the world. Su Zimo was stunned on the spot. He had not imagined that there would be a living being within this ancient palace. The human emperor's palace was a relic of the ancient era and had been through countless years in the sands of time where endless supreme and mighty figures have been buried. Time was the scariest thing which even emperors could not defend against. Who was that old man? Was he a character from the ancient era or was he a cultivator who had entered the human emperor's palace later on but was trapped here? Or perhaps, was this old man the legendary human emperor? Su Zimo did not have the energy to contemplate those questions and neither could he hang on any longer as he collapsed. Gazing at the ceiling, he found his vision blurring. The old man approached him and suddenly reached out. Between his fingers was an elixir the size of a longan. It gave off a faint smell of blood. For some reason, the aura the elixir gave off felt extremely familiar to Su Zimo. The old man peeled open Su Zimo's mouth and put the elixir inside. Su Zimo had no strength to resist and the elixir melted in his mouth, sending a spicy warmth down his throat. Upon entering his stomach, it lingered for a moment before suddenly letting out a terrifying burst of energy. The energy felt like a tidal wave as it surged and cruised through his limbs. An intense blood chi shot forth, wrapping Su Zimo in it as an extremely rich aura of vitality spewed out. One after another, beams of rainbow lights shot out in a divine manner, nourishing every single bit of his flesh. His body that was initially defeated was reignited with vitality. His injuries healed internally and externally as his charcoal black flesh peeled away. Pieces of flesh started regenerating on his bones with endless vitality. It was a regrowth of his flesh. This was a miracle almost akin to resurrection. A numbing sensation prickled through Su Zimo's nerves, almost causing him to go insane. Ah! Su Zimo could not help but let out a long bellow. The power within the elixir nourished his broken body like the way dew healed barren land. His dried flesh regrew and the tears on his organs closed, returning to normal. Su Zimo's vitality was regenerating continuously. With the help of that energy, his physique's strong regeneration capabilities were awakened once more as his blood chi ran rampant within his body. Flesh could be seen growing at a visible speed near the wound on his abdomen, forming in pieces before combining together, merely leaving a faint scar. It was the same for the injury on his left chest. Although his collarbone was snapped earlier on, it was now piecing back together rapidly. Some time later, cracks appeared on Su Zimo's charred skin and his scabs fell one after another, revealing jade-smooth skin beneath. In the blink of an eye, all of his scabs had fallen off without any scars left behind as he emitted a massive wave of vitality. All his injuries were healed. That was not all the changes brought about by the elixir. Not only did the elixir possess a massive vitality essence, it also contained terrifying blood chi and pure spirit energy. Initially, the spirit sea in Su Zimo's dantian had already dried up. Right now, spirit energy was gushing in endlessly, forming a sea with massive waves that was even fiercer than before. Su Zimo's cultivation realm was rising swiftly and he was at the peak of 7 Meridian Foundation establishment before long. He did not even need to guide it. The spirit sea surged and a series of pure, rich spirit energy pushed against his body's 8th spirit meridian. Bang! 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 There were a series of loud bangs and almost no time was wasted as the momentum brought him through. He had unlocked his 8th spirit meridian. Throughout history, there may have been no other cultivator who managed to unlock their 8th spirit meridian as easily as Su Zimo without the need to even consume a meridian unlocking elixir. Even after unlocking his 8th spirit meridian, his spirit sea did not calm down and was still roaring furiously. His cultivation realm was still climbing. A long time later, it finally came to a stop when he was at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. At that moment, Su Zimo was finally certain. After the 8th Spirit Meridian, there was definitely a 9th Spirit Meridian, the legendary Extreme Foundation establishment. He was still in possession of a Meridian unlocking elixir. Su Zimo planned to attempt to unlock his 9th Spirit Meridian after stabilizing down at this current cultivation realm so as to become the second person to reach the Extreme Foundation establishment realm after the Human Emperor. At the same time, the terrifying blood chi in the elixir restructured Su Zimo's body as well. Crack! 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 A series of crackling sounds echoed from within his body as his tendons and bones rang together. His blood chi climbed and he was surrounded by a thick demonic chi, causing multiple ancient demons to form. A mysterious glow shone from his 7 orifices, turning brighter and brighter. A moment later, Su Zimo's body shuddered and his 7 orifices shone brightly. His power of blood chi exploded and his skin, flesh, tendons, bones, marrow, organs and orifices synergized with one another, forming a major heavenly cycle. He had attained greater mastery of the orifice clearing section. All of a sudden, his eyes jolted wide open and a beam of light that tore through the night shot forth in a bedazzling manner. Rising upright, Su Zimo felt his blood chi rumble like a tsunami as a rainbow light shone from his organs. His major tendons were firm, his bones were lively and his flesh was flawless. Upon closer inspection, he could even see a mysterious luster cruising through them. It was as though he had attained a perfect body. Su Zimo could clearly sense that his body was different and his 5 senses were even more keen. Without even opening his eyes, he could hear the sounds of fishes playing in a pond nearby as the image was visualized in his mind. Meek as a virgin with the burst power of a rabbit, his body was even more coordinated with the fusion of toughness and flexibility. With every single motion of his arm, he could produce limitless power with a rampant might. At this point of your cultivation, you would have perfected your technique and cultivated universal sight and hearing. With the help of the spirit perception, you will be able to avoid danger without seeing or smelling it. Be it whether you're moving, sitting, or lying down, your heart will be able to sense and you will be able to defeat your enemies within 10 feet with your bare hands. Su Zimo could not help but recall the words that Dai Yu left him with as he murmured to himself, "I'm here now." Chapter 462, Mysterious Old Man. Chapter 462, Mysterious Old Man. Looking at his brand new body, Su Zimo lamented to himself as he experienced the power surging within him. The human emperor's palace is truly an ancient mythical object. To think that a single elixir from it would possess such wondrous effects. At that moment, Su Zimo's appearance had already returned to normal after being washed by the energy of the elixir. With his elegant features, he wore a set of green robes once more. There was no one else around other than that mysterious old man who had disappeared. Since his disguise methods were most probably child's play that would be seen through instantly in the eyes of the old man, Su Zimo had no intention of continuing with it. He looked around and saw that the place was extremely spacious and boundless. Rather than a palace, it seemed like they were in another world. The air was refreshing and the spirit chi was richer. The environment was even better than the ancient battlefield. Concerned about Demonis G's safety, he sped forward with his spirit wings. Life was vibrant in that spacious land and it was filled with greenery. Far away, at the side of a gigantic lake, a white deer was drinking water. It had a pair of wings on its back and its eyes darted around with spirit. Raising its head, the white deer was not afraid in the slightest bit when it caught sight of Su Zimo. Its ears twitched slightly, as if it was curious. Su Zimo sped across the surface of the lake. Thud! Thud! Gigantic scarlet fishes leaped out of the lake, as if they were startled. Each of them was around 8 feet long and was shaped like a carp with a pair of tiny horns on its head. Each of them looked like they weighed a few kilograms. When they twitched and fell back into the lake, ripples were formed. Those are. Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart stirred when he caught sight of those gigantic scarlet fishes as he exclaimed, Hungong fishes. Hungong fishes had succulent flesh and were extremely shiny. Containing extremely few bones, they possessed a massive amount of energy, and it was a great tonic to strengthen one's tendons and bones when consumed. That was definitely a pure-blooded living being of the primordial era and had long gone extinct on Tianhuang mainland. Screech. In the skies far away, a clear cry could be heard. A gigantic bird streaked through the skies. The left half of its body was green and the right half of its body was red. Focusing his gaze, Su Zimo's was shocked and nearly fell from midair. That wasn't a gigantic bird, it was a pair of birds. The ancient manuals back in the sect had a few short sentences describing a bird of the primordial era. The being bird only had a single eye and wing, and the males were green while the females were red. Together, the couple must fly in tandem. Back when he saw that description, Su Zimo even shook his head and laughed to himself, thinking that it was impossible. How could there be a type of bird in the world that could fly with only a single eye and wing? Now that he was seeing it for himself, Su Zimo truly experienced how incredible the universe was. At the same time, a thought flashed through his mind as he spun around and looked at the white deer with wings beside the lake. Leaping, the white deer spread its wings and flew into the skies. It came to Su Zimo's side and lowered its head, brushing against his arm intimately before flying off. Bai Zhe. That was an auspicious mythological beast of the primordial era, Bai Zhe. Legend has it that the Bai Zhe was snow white with wings and could speak in human tongue. It understood the emotions of all living beings and could distinguish between all the beings in the world, be it ghosts, gods, or any other living beings. This was an auspicious beast that could change one's luck for the better. The legends are real. Su Zimo muttered softly. Taking a deep breath of air, he soared into the skies and looked around before shuddering uncontrollably. He stood rooted to the spot as shock filled his eyes. Countless mythical and different beasts roamed this vast land. There was a 3D brutish beast with flames on its leg, a purple chicken with eyes under its wings, a rat that was 100 kilograms and filled with raging flames, a 3D golden toad with scales. The beasts were so incredible that Su Zimo had never heard of them before, he couldn't even name them. In fact, he even suspected if he had reversed through time and returned to the primordial era. All of a sudden, his heart skipped a beat and his gaze froze. Not far away, an old man stood with his hands behind his back. That was the mysterious old man who fed him the elixir. Without thinking twice, Su Zimo arrived before the mysterious old man in a flash. Bowing deeply, he said with sincerity, "Thank you for rescuing me, Senior. I'm truly immensely grateful." The mysterious old man merely nodded and stared at Su Zimo with scrutinizing eyes. At that moment, Su Zimo had countless questions on his mind. Who was the old man before him? What was that elixir? Was this the human emperor's palace? Why were there so many incredible beasts? However, those questions merely fluttered through his mind as he asked, "Senior, may I ask where the girl who entered the human emperor's palace together with me is?" Expressionlessly, the mysterious old man replied, "She's not here." Not here? Su Zimo's heart clenched up as he asked hurriedly, "Where is she?" "We entered the human emperor's palace together. How can she not be here? What are you getting anxious about?" The mysterious old man rolled his eyes and harumphed gently, "I was merely saying that the lass is not in the same stone chamber as you." Stone chamber? Su Zimo was confused. Pointing at his feet, the mysterious old man remarked casually, "The world we are in right now is merely a single stone chamber in the human emperor's palace." Gradually, Su Zimo's mouth fell open, he was dumbfounded and shock filled his eyes. This world with skies and stars, possessing boundless land with mountains, lush greenery and countless incredible beasts, was actually just a stone chamber within the human emperor's palace. What sort of powers were these? The mysterious old man's next sentence gave Su Zimo an even bigger shock, such that he could not snap out of it for a long time. There's billions of such stone chambers in the human emperor's palace, the mysterious old man said casually with a calm expression. Su Zimo. A long time later, still worried about Demoness G, he asked, "How is that girl in pink?" "Don't worry, she won't die. She'll follow her own destiny," the mysterious old man replied. Su Zimo only heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing that. Ha! Suddenly, the mysterious old man sneered, "Young man, you're truly brazen to challenge the rules set by my master. If it wasn't because my mistress was kind enough to speak up for you, seeing how pitiful that girl is, she would have died long ago." "Master, mistress." Su Zimo blinked and asked in a testing manner, "Senior, the master you're referring to is. Can you get any dumber?" Frowning, the mysterious old man glared at Su Zimo and said in a deep tone, "Since this is the human emperor's palace, my master is definitely the human emperor." Su Zimo was shocked. Needless to say, the mistress should be the human emperor's Dao companion. The mysterious old man glanced at Su Zimo from the side of his eyes and sized up the latter while muttering, "This young man seems dumb. Could master have made a wrong judgment?" Actually, Su Zimo was not entirely to blame. Everything that he had seen and experienced after entering the human emperor's palace was way beyond his imagination. There were things that he could not dare to believe even if he had guessed it. Furthermore, even now, he wasn't clear of the identity of the old man before him. Chapter 463, Inheritance. Chapter 463, Inheritance. The mysterious old man's statement revealed another important message. The human emperor was alive. He was an emperor of the ancient era, after all. Through the endless years, countless emperors have already died. To think that the emperor who was lauded as the strongest and most domineering throughout history was still alive. Could it be that after endless cultivation and breakthroughs, living beings are truly able to extend their lifespans and age with the universe, or even reach the realm of eternal indestructibility? Since the human emperor was still alive, what cultivation realm was he at right now? Senior human emperor, he's still on Tianhuang Mainland? A moment later, Su Zimo composed himself before asking. Of course not. The mysterious old man waved it off. Master isn't here either. You don't have to dream about getting to meet him either, you're not qualified yet. Su Zimo was not ashamed upon hearing that and merely took it in his stride and smiled. Right after, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he recalled that before she left, Daiyu said with a chuckle that she was about to return to her world. Was that the same world as the human emperor? Since there had never been any signs of immortals found on Tianhuang Mainland, did it mean that after attaining immortality, cultivators could pass through the void and travel to another world? Could that world be filled with countless immortals like Daiyu and the human emperor? What sort of a vast and vibrant place was that? Instantly, countless thoughts filled Su Zimo's mind and he developed a longing interest towards that foreign world. Before you, a total of 7 people entered the human emperor's palace and each of them received a different inheritance. The inheritance you're about to receive is different from theirs. It can be considered as the true legacy of the human emperor. At that point, the mysterious old man looked deeply at Su Zimo before waving his sleeves gently, causing 2 objects to float in midair. It was a piece of paper and a gigantic seal. The paper was written with endless tiny words. Su Zimo merely swept his eyes across and felt them prickle slightly. The gigantic seal was squarish and golden throughout. On it, a divine dragon was etched, coiling around it in a lifelike manner. The gigantic golden seal hovered in midair, emanating waves of powerful might, as though it could crush the stars and suppress the entire world. The mysterious old man remarked, "This is the coiling dragon seal. It's a Incarnate spirit weapon, keep it well. A Incarnate spirit weapon. Su Zimo was shocked. Prior to this, Su Zimo witnessed how terrifying Incarnate spirit weapons were in that battle beneath the human emperor's palace. The shimmering silver circlet that Hang Qiuyu brought out shattered his supreme-grade spirit weapon instantly. That was also the reason why Hang Qiuyu managed to survive with a sliver of health after receiving Su Zimo's punch. Furthermore, Foundation establishment cultivators were unable to unleash the full might of Incarnate spirit weapons. The terrifying burst power of Incarnate spirit weapons could only be released in the hands of golden cores. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo did not reject and took over the coiling dragon seal, injecting spirit energy into it. Whoosh! A bright light shone on the coiling dragon seal and Su Zimo seemed like he was holding a blazing sun with an intimidating might. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed and he shuddered as his wrist sank. It was heavy. After it was injected with spirit energy, the coiling dragon seal almost caused Su Zimo to embarrass himself as it weighed down on him. Now that Su Zimo had attained greater mastery of the orifice clearing section, his physique had the strength to suppress all other 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators without even taking on his demon form. However, despite that, his body experienced pressure from the coiling dragon seal. The mysterious old man nodded to himself. He thought that Su Zimo would definitely embarrass himself since he was unprepared and would be squashed by the coiling dragon seal. The fact that the lad could remain standing without moving had exceeded his expectations. Clearing away his spirit energy, Su Zimo put the coiling dragon seal away in his storage bag. That was a great treasure. Delighted, Su Zimo's gaze shifted towards the page of sutra at the side expectantly. The mysterious old man pointed to the page and remarked indifferently, "This is a secret skill created by my master in the past. If you manage to master it, you can already fight against golden cores at Foundation Establishment Realm. In fact, you can even challenge golden core phenomenons." Pust. Su Zimo's expression changed slightly. The difference between cultivation realms were divided into minor and major realms. For example, in Foundation Establishment, early stage, mid-stage, late stage and perfected were minor realms, whereas it was a major realm between Foundation Establishment and Golden Core realm. There was an insurmountable gap between major realms. It symbolized one breaking free of the restrictions of the universe and extending their lifespans. The difference in strength was even worlds apart. But right now, the human emperor's secret skill could allow Su Zimo to challenge the strength of golden cores even at Foundation Establishment realm. The mysterious old man's final statement was even more shocking. In fact, you can even challenge golden core phenomenons. Every single cultivator knew that golden core phenomenons were the extremes of spirit arts and there were extremely few people who could cultivate them. The reason why many Foundation Establishment paragons wanted to enter the ancient battlefield so that they could progress in their Foundation Establishment realm was because they wanted to be able to cultivate the strongest golden core phenomenons when they formed their cores. Without further description, the mysterious old man's simple statement had already revealed how terrifying that secret skill was. Sighing gently, the mysterious old man continued, "The conditions required to cultivate this skill are extremely stringent and after my master created it, nobody else managed to learn it. I hope that you'll be able to succeed." Even though he said that, it was clear that the mysterious old man did not bear much hope through his tone. Su Zimo received the page of sutra and focused his attention. There were 3 tiny golden words in the middle of the first row, Ancient Dragonification Manual. Those 3 simple words caused a terrifying pressure that was shuddering. For some reason, Su Zimo felt his body heating up, it was as though an inexplicable power was surging within him. The mysterious old man's voice sounded once more, "Although you won't be able to transform into a divine dragon after attaining greater mastery of the Ancient Dragonification Manual, you'll be able to conjure the phantom of a divine dragon that possesses the true might of the dragons. Humans are weak and have ordinary bloodlines, they can't be compared against the dragons who are extremely powerful from birth. If you want to cultivate the ancient dragonification manual, you will have to steal the blood chi of the dragon race. The elixir you consumed earlier was a blood-flesh elixir made from the flesh of a young dragon. Instantly, Su Zimo had a look of realization. That was the reason why he had a sense of familiarity towards the aura given off by the elixir. Su Zimo's eyes flickered and he frowned in deep thought. According to the mysterious old man's words, one could only succeed in cultivating the ancient dragonification manual after consuming the blood chi of the dragon race. He was in a rather unique situation. A couple of years ago, he had consumed half a dragon. Although it was not formed yet, that was the egg of a divine dragon after all. He. The mysterious old man chuckled coldly. Don't look down on the fact that it's a young dragon. You were able to receive such immense benefits just by consuming an elixir made from the flesh of a young dragon. If it was an adult divine dragon, the power of a single drop of its blood would be enough to destroy you, let alone its flesh. Su Zimo did not doubt that statement at all. Back then, after he and Night Spirit consumed that dragon egg, their bodies almost gorged to the point of explosion and it took them a full 3 years to digest it completely. Chapter 464, Two Utmost Treasures. Chapter 464, Two Utmost Treasures. The conditions required to cultivate the ancient dragonification manual are extremely stringent and obtaining the blood chi of the dragon race is merely the beginning. Among the 7 people who entered the human emperor's palace before you, there were also some of them with potentials comparable to you. However, they were merely slightly inferior. The mysterious old man said with a trace of pity, tsk. That lay kid was rather decent as well. However, it was a pity that he couldn't unlock his 9th spirit meridian, causing him to miss this great opportunity to get the ancient dragonification manual. At that point, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he recalled Uncle Liang's words. Legend has it that the secret to the Extreme Foundation establishment is hidden within the human emperor's palace. He asked hurriedly, Senior, may I ask, how does one unlock the 9th spirit meridian and cultivate to the point of Extreme Foundation establishment? Foundation establishment was an extremely important step in one's path of cultivation, and how stable their roots were would decide their future accomplishments. The mysterious old man replied, 9 represents the extreme, and if one wants to unlock their 9th spirit meridian, their spirit energy would have to be extremely pure without the slightest bit of impurity. I've checked through your spirit energy. It's very pure, and that's quite seldom. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo remarked, Senior, up to this point of my cultivation, I've rarely consumed any elixirs, and even for those that I consume, they were at perfect grade. I think it should have something to do with that. Apart from perfect grade elixirs, every other grade of elixir possessed impurities. Long-term consumption would result in consolidation of those impurities. Although they would not have a significant impact on a cultivator's combat strength, it would impede the possibility of them unlocking their 9th spirit meridian. Elixirs are only part of the equation. The mysterious old man shook his head. In Tianhuang Mainland, there are many sects and factions with rich heritages and immense foundations. It's not rare for them to provide perfect-grade elixirs for the paragons in their sects with the most potentials. However, even while cultivating and absorbing spirit chi, there's no way to avoid the existence of impurities. While cultivating? Su Zimo frowned slightly. The mysterious old man explained, mortals consume food which would turn into feces upon digestion, creating impure chi and filth. Therefore, at a certain point of cultivation, there's a saying of Inidia. Su Zimo nodded. He had heard about Inidia before. It was said that after entering nascent soul realm and cultivating an essence spirit, cultivators could live without consuming food and merely take in dew and the essence of the universe to survive, soaring through the skies and riding the clouds. In fact, they could even scour the world and explore the 4 oceans and 8 desolates with a single thought. The mysterious old man continued, similar to mortal food, spirit qi would inevitably contain impurities upon absorption to one's dantian. That is, unless the person was in possession of an utmost treasure that could help them purify the spirit qi. At that point, he gave a meaningful look at Su Zimo's right hand. Suddenly, Su Zimo gave off a gradual look of realization as he recalled how qi entered his body while he was cultivating his qi condensation manual. Back then, spirit qi entered his body through his right hand. Before entering the human emperor's palace, the few sealers said that his right hand was a divine phoenix bone. If that was true, it would explain many things. Entering his right hand, spirit qi would be purified by the divine phoenix bone, incinerating all impurities and allowing him to only take in the purest spirit qi. Back then, he had just mastered qi condensation and was able to release a level 3 spirit fire with his right hand immediately. Now that he thought about it, that was not a true level 3 spirit fire, he merely managed to possess the might and heat of a level 3 spirit fire because of the divine phoenix bone. Of course, from the beginning till now, Su Zimo had never released the true powers of the divine phoenix bone. At the battle beneath the human emperor's palace, the terror of the divine phoenix bone had only revealed itself for a brief moment after absorbing the golden core's true fire before returning to normal. The mysterious old man said with a hint of lament, "This divine phoenix bone is one of the rare few utmost treasures in Tianhuang Mainland. The person who changed your fate by attaching your wrist with this divine phoenix bone must have exerted a lot of effort." At this point, Su Zimo was finally certain that his blood bone palm was the legendary divine phoenix bone. Previously, he was severely injured after killing the joyful sect cultivators in Tsanglang mountain range and his right hand was battered. By the time he woke up, his right hand was already perfectly fine. In other words, during the few days he fainted, Daiyu had not only helped him to plant a spirit root, she had even reattached his wrist with the divine phoenix bone. If you are smart, you should have realized that you must not reveal that divine phoenix bone again after leaving this place. Otherwise, you are definitely bound to die. The mysterious old man said with a stern expression, even the mighty figures and patriarchs of the human race would be tempted to make a move for the divine phoenix bone. Su Zimo nodded. Thankfully, he changed his appearance and hid his identity beneath the human emperor's palace. Otherwise, he would definitely be hunted upon re-entering Tianhuang Mainland. A man's talent would often arouse the greed of others. There is also an extremely strict requirement for one spirit root if they want to reach the extreme foundation establishment realm. Regarding that, you have no issue as well. After a brief pause, the mysterious old man looked at Su Zimo deeply once more. There are only that few types of utmost treasures in Tianhuang Mainland. Someone has really spared no expenses in trying to pave your path forward by leaving you with 2 of them. Ah! Su Zimo was shocked. Before Daiyu left, she had left him 3 gifts. One of them was his spirit root and now, he knew that the divine phoenix bone was another. There was still one more unknown gift. Through the mysterious old man's words, it seemed like the second utmost treasure had something to do with his spirit root. Su Zimo could not help but ask, "What's the second utmost treasure?" "Even if I explain it to you, it's no use for you because your cultivation realm isn't there yet. Perhaps one day in the future, you might be able to see it for yourself." The mysterious old man shook his head. Su Zimo did not press on, feeling slightly disappointed. The mysterious old man continued, "The ancient dragonification manual expends a lot of one's spirit energy and it can only be released with an extreme foundation establishment. Not only that, the ancient dragonification manual requires a lot from the physique of a cultivator. Although you're only conjuring the phantom of a divine dragon, it still possesses the true might of a dragon. Extremely terrifying, it overrides over all living beings. An ordinary body wouldn't be able to withstand the might of the dragon and even ancient remnant beasts would explode into a blood mist. Since you're someone who does immortality and demonic cultivation together, your physique is alarming and is enough to withstand the ancient dragonification manual. Su Zimo was not surprised that the mysterious old man could read his background like a book. However, what surprised Su Zimo was the mysterious old man's attitude towards the matter. If the various major sects of Tianhuang Mainland were to know that he was doing immortality and demonic cultivation at the same time, they would definitely regard him as a despicable outcast and kill him. However, the mysterious old man was indifferent towards the issue. Waving it off with his hand, the mysterious old man said, "There's less than half a year left. Stay here and cultivate for now. You don't have to force yourself even if you don't succeed." "All right." Su Zimo nodded and strode to the lakeside without hesitation, sitting down to glance through the page of sutra. Every single word on the sutra possessed a mysterious might. Even with Su Zimo's powerful eyes, he had to take a rest every now and then. He could only continue reading after closing his eyes for a short break. When he was thirsty, Su Zimo would drink from the lake. When he was hungry, he would catch a hungong fish for food. Other than that, the rest of his time was spent on cultivating the ancient dragonification manual. Just like that, 5 months passed in the blink of an eye. This day, as it was close to the end of the year in the ancient battlefield, the mysterious old man appeared and was about to inform Su Zimo, who was at the lakeside. All of a sudden, a change happened to Su Zimo's aura. A terrifying might descended at the lakeside, shocking the masses. Chapter 465, True Dragon. Chapter 465, True Dragon. Sensing something, the mysterious old man looked toward Su Zimo. Beside the lake, Su Zimo assumed a lotus position with an upright back. His eyes were closed as his black hair swayed without any wind. A terrifying aura was coming forth from within his body, climbing rapidly. It was as though an ancient power was being awakened. An extremely long-living being appeared in midair, coiling several rounds around Su Zimo upwards. Finally, it stopped in midair and its gigantic head stared in the direction of the mysterious old man. Dragon race. Compared to adult dragons which can be thousands of feet long, this could only be considered as a young dragon. Although it was only a phantom of a young dragon, the aura that it produced was shuddering, as if it could conquer all living beings. Gradually, green scales appeared on the young dragon's body one after another, shimmering with a cold glint. The bone spikes on its back and its sharp claws were bared while its horns stood gloriously. The phantom of the green dragon was actually turning corporeal. Even the scales, bones and claws were condensed with flesh, lifelike and no different from a true dragon. Pust. The mysterious old man gasped and his expression changed. Disbelief filled his eyes as he exclaimed, "How is that possible?" The ancient dragonification manual was meant to conjure the phantom of a divine dragon by using the blood chi of the dragon race. The shape of a divine dragon could only be made out faintly. That alone was heavenly defying. However, Su Zimo had conjured an actual true dragon. Even the human emperor who created this secret skill was unable to reach this point. How did this foundation establishment cultivator manage it? Could this young man have achieved a new comprehension of the ancient dragonification manual within a mere 6 months? All of a sudden, Su Zimo's eyes burst wide open with a lightning gaze. At the same time, the coiling dragon above him opened its eyes as well. Cold and mighty, it could not be ignored. The man and dragon opened their eyes at the same time. The moment the dragon opened its eyes, it was as though it had awakened and possessed actual life as it surveyed its surroundings with an overwhelming might. Given the mysterious old man's cultivation realm, he was composed and felt nothing much as the dragon's eyes swept past him. However, the incredible beasts in the surroundings sprawled onto the ground motionlessly. The fishes in the lake went silent, not daring to swim, and the birds in the skies fell one after another fearfully. Against the dragon's might, all the living beings felt a sense that came from the depths of their souls. The dragons were one of the strongest living beings back in the primordial era where the thousands of races reigned. It had once ruled over the world above all the thousands of races. Although Su Zimo was merely a Foundation establishment cultivator, with the protection of the dragon, he exuded a dominance that looked down on the world. It was peerless, as though he had control over all divine beings in the universe. Bang! Su Zimo swayed a little and the dragon coiling around him dissipated before disappearing gradually. The immense pressure vanished. Once again, the incredible beasts went back to play and everything returned to normalcy. Heaving a sigh of relief, the mysterious old man came before Su Zimo and said, "Since you forcibly released the ancient dragonification manual without your cultivation realm being high enough, you won't be able to sustain it for long. Once you're at extreme Foundation establishment, you'll be able to release the secret skill and use it against your foes." Su Zimo nodded. He had summoned that small dragon for a couple of seconds, but the spirit energy within his body was thoroughly expended and his spirit sea was almost dry. Right now, he was at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. The fact that he was still unable to release the ancient dragonification manual given his immense spirit energy was proof of how terrifying that secret skill was. The mysterious old man's gaze lingered around Su Zimo, sizing him continuously. It was only until Su Zimo's hairs stood on end that the mysterious old man asked, "How did you manage to conjure an actual true dragon?" Hesitating for a moment, Su Zimo shook his head. "I don't know either." He had a guess in his heart, but he wasn't certain. The fact that he was able to conjure a true dragon might have a lot to do with his consumption of half a dragon egg. The elixir that the mysterious old man fed him was merely a blood-flesh elixir made from the flesh of a dragon. However, he had devoured half of an actual dragon a couple of years ago. After entering his stomach, the essence and vitality of the dragon race filled every single part of his body. Cultivating the ancient dragonification manual caused that power within his body to awaken, causing yet another unaccounted change. Master truly has good judgment. The mysterious old man did not press on and merely lamented. A moment later, he said, "The year is almost up and the last that entered together with you has left first. It's about time for you to do so as well." Su Zimo was relieved when he heard that Demonis G was fine. Bowing deeply to the mysterious old man, he said, "Thank you for your life-saving grace and the guidance for the past half-year, Senior." He had truly benefited way too much this time round. He had attained greater mastery of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and was only a step away from forming an inner core. In terms of cultivation, he was already at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. As long as he consumed the Meridian unlocking elixir and continued cultivating, he would have a chance of unlocking the 9th Spirit Meridian. He would be able to cultivate to the legendary Extreme Foundation establishment realm. At that point, even without taking on his demon form, he would be able to fight against golden cores with the might of the ancient dragonification manual. The mysterious old man waved it off. "You don't have to thank me. If you're truly able to reach my master's level one day, thank him personally face to face. Where do you want to descend? I can send you there." After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said, "Xiantian City." Upon re-entering the ancient battlefield, Su Zimo could clearly sense that the place seemed to have gotten more unstable. It meant that the year was almost up. Xiantian City was a little empty and quiet without the bustle from before. Most of the cultivators have already left and only a few remained. They traveled through the city with hurried expressions. It was clear that they were also preparing to leave. There was already no one at the territory of Elixir Yang sect. Su Zimo went straight to Xiaoning's room and caught sight of her handwriting etched on a stone table after looking around. "Brother, Elixir Yang sect is located in the middle continent of Tianhuang Mainland. Because their teleportation spot is extremely far from Xiantian City, I'll have to make a move with Sister Tang Yu first. Once I cultivate the longevity elixir, I'll return to Yen country to look for Big Brother. Both Night Spirit and I are fine, don't miss us. Regards, Xiaoning." The writing was scribbled a little hurriedly, it was obvious that Xiaoning truly had no time at the end and had to leave. Smiling to himself, Su Zimo reached out and gave a simple swipe. Even though it was a casual move, an entire layer of the stone table's surface was wiped off and the words disappeared completely. Before leaving Xiantian City, Su Zimo had already instructed Night Spirit to stay by Xiaoning's side and head to Elixir Yang's sect with her. He had to return to the Great Zhou dynasty and was unable to stay by Xiaoning's side. As such, the only way he would feel relieved was if Night Spirit was with her. Now that he knew that Xiaoning was fine, Su Zimo was at ease and did not linger further in the city. He headed straight for the cave abode that Ji Yaoxue and the rest were cultivating in. Previously, he promised her that he would return for her. Suddenly, Su Zimo could not help but frown when he recalled a person. Jun Hao. Previously, he suspected that there was something wrong with that person but he had no proof. Before leaving, he even reminded Ji Yaoxue to keep something up her sleeve to guard against that guy. I hope Yaoshue's fine. Su Zimo's eyes flashed with a cold glint and a massive pair of wings spread out behind him. Blood chi burst forth and he sped forward at full speed. His speed was already at its limits. Chapter 466, Fallout. Chapter 466, Fallout. A steep mountain stood at the borders of the ancient battlefield. Halfway on the mountain, a man stood in front of the cave abode with his hands behind his back. He was handsome and had a noble aura, but his expression was grim and his eyes flashed with coldness occasionally. Azure Frost Sect's Jun Hao was the prince of the Great Xia dynasty. The reason why he courted Ji Yaoxue painstakingly previously was because he knew about her identity as the princess long ago. If the two of them could develop further, he could make use of the opportunity and her identity to understand the background of the Great Zhou dynasty fully. However, it was a pity that Ji Yaoxue maintained a neutral attitude towards him all these years, similar to how she would treat all the other senior and junior brothers in the sect. Although Jun Hao was a little frustrated, he was extremely scheming and was in no hurry. The path of cultivation was long and there were many chances for them to interact since they were in the same sect. However, it was a pity that a monstrous cultivator appeared in the sect competition, giving him a sense of threat. When Ji Yaoxue wore that long pale yellow dress and circled around that man, smiling with a bedazzling wink, that scene stabbed Jun Hao's heart like a thorn. Su Zimo. He gripped his fists slowly and narrowed his gaze. Ji Yaoxue's attitude towards that man was clearly different from others. Even the way she looked at him was enough to make Jun Hao jealous. After entering the ancient battlefield, his plans were further destroyed when Su Zimo unleashed terrifying methods and suppressed all enemies domineeringly. Almost all the great Xia cultivators that entered the ancient battlefield were killed. The scariest thing was that Su Zimo had already begun suspecting him. In that period of time, Jun Hao lived his days on thin ice, hiding carefully, afraid to let out a single mistake. During normal times, that man looked like a scholar with a friendly appearance and calm gaze. However, Jun Hao knew in his heart that this was a man who was decisive to kill. As long as he revealed a single mistake, that man would definitely kill him without giving him a chance to explain. Finally, that day, Su Zimo left. It was only then that Jun Hao heaved a sigh of relief and felt relaxed. However, it did not take long for him to be frustrated once more. In fact, he was even seething with hatred. There were 5 stone chambers in the cave abode. Before leaving, Su Zimo had actually set up a formation outside the 5th stone chamber. Ever since that day, Ji Yaoxue had not stepped out from that stone chamber at all. No matter how Jun Hao tried to invite her, she would always have excuses to push him away. At the same time, she did not allow anyone in, including the remaining 2 guards of the Great Zhou dynasty. Yaoxue, have you started suspecting me as well? Jun Hao's gaze flickered. Slowly his expression turned cold as he murmured, since that's the case, don't blame me for falling out with you. He withdrew a spirit crane from his storage bag and wrote a few words on it. After injecting spirit energy to it, it spread its wings and flew, disappearing into the void instantly. Turning around, Junhao entered the cave abode and walked towards the fifth stone chamber. He did not walk far when Xiaofan of Iridescent Cloud's palace approached him. The latter greeted with a smile. "Brother Junhao, the year is almost up. When are we leaving?" After consuming the Meridian Unlocking Elixir, Xiaofan cultivated to 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Junhao was at 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment right now. With a fake smile, Junhao replied, "I'm about to look for junior sister Yaoxue to discuss this. Come along." "All right." Xiaofan agreed readily without suspicion. After passing the long tunnel, they arrived before the fifth stone chamber where the remaining 2 guards of the Great Zhou dynasty stood on each side. Both of them were also at the peak of 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Most of the cultivators at the center of the ancient battlefield were at 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment, and the paragons of super sects were even at 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment. However, in reality, most of the cultivators in the ancient battlefield were only at 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. "Greetings, fellow Taoists." The 2 guards greeted with cupped fists. Since there were only 5 of them here, all of them were long familiar with one another. Junhao's gaze was fixated on the stone door as he said loudly with a smile, "Junior sister Yaoxue, the year is almost up. Let's move today and return to the teleportation spot." A moment later, an unhurried voice sounded from within the stone chamber. "Senior brother Jun, there's no need to hurry. Zimo promised me that he will return. There's no difference waiting for a couple more days." Junhao's expression froze when he heard that. Lowering his head slightly, his gaze was ghastly and his face was frighteningly dark. "Wait for him?" Xiaofan sneered. That person didn't know what's good for him and ventured deep into the ancient battlefield. Since there's been no news of him for so long, he's definitely dead. Ji Yaoxue replied indifferently, "I believe that he won't die and will definitely return." "Fu." Xiaofan stifled a chuckle and shook his head. He was absolutely sure that Su Zimo was dead after venturing into the depths of the ancient battlefield. Junhao took a deep breath of air. By the time he looked up, he had a smile once more. "Junior sister, there's only 10 odd days left. If that man wanted to return, he would have done so long ago. We only need 2 days to reach the teleportation spot from here. We can still make it even if we move a couple of days later," Ji Yaoxue replied firmly. "Brother Junhao, since she won't leave, let's leave." Xiaofan sneered once more, "We can definitely return to the teleportation spot safely given our current cultivation realms." The smile on Junhao's face had vanished as he said slowly with a cold expression, "Yaoxue, I've already given you your last chance. Since you didn't cherish it, don't blame me for not showing mercy on account of us being in the same sect." The moment he said that, the atmosphere turned strange. The 2 guards frowned and looked at Junhao in confusion. Xiaofan was stumped as well. Things were fine earlier on, why did he suddenly have a change in attitude? What did it mean by last chance and not showing mercy? With a cold gaze, Junhao glared at the stone door, as though he could see the woman inside, and said word by word, "Yaoxue, you'll be leaving today whether you want to or not. The choice isn't yours." "Junhao, what do you mean by that?" Sensing Junhao's hostility, one of the guards hollered warily. Inside the stone chamber, Ji Yaoxue sighed. "You still couldn't hide it after all. Since you've already begun to suspect me, there's no need for me to pretend any longer." Junhao admitted readily. "I was initially skeptical when Zimo reminded me at the start." Ji Yaoxue shook her head. "However, you've been too anxious for the past half a year, trying to find excuses to either enter or to get me out. At that time, I knew that Zimo's guess was right. Indeed, he was the one who spoiled my plans. Junhao cursed and pointed at the stone chamber, sneering, Yaoxue, do you think that a few layers of formations laid down by a dead man would be able to protect you? Zimo mentioned that even an 8-meridian foundation establishment cultivator would have to take a few days to dispel this formation. Ji Yaoxue replied, however, it's a pity that you're at 7-meridian foundation establishment. Given your strength, there's no way you'll be able to dispel this formation. Junhao, give it up. Even if it's something that Zimo left behind, you won't be able to deal with it either. Junhao was furious upon hearing Yaoxue's words and lost control of his emotions. He snarled as an ugly expression showed on his face and green veins popped from his neck. Yaoxue, once I break through this stone chamber, I'll let you enjoy for a long time beneath my crotch. A series of dull, heavy footsteps sounded, approaching from afar in the tunnel. Bang! 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 The entire cave abode was shaking as dust fell endlessly. Instantly, an aura of death gushed over with a suffocating stench. Chapter 467, Monster. Chapter 467, Monster. Although she was behind a formation in the stone chamber, Yaoxue could still sense the repressive pressure that was arriving. It was as though a supreme monster was rapidly approaching. Junhao's expression was dark and his gaze was cold. I can't deal with something that Su Zimo left behind? Yaoxue, do you really think that he's the only one with an ace up his sleeve? Following Junhao's fallout, both parties were on the brink of fighting. The two great Zhou guards looked serious and withdrew their spirit weapons one after another, ready to fight. Xiaofan's eyes were filled with shock. He retreated slowly upon realizing that something was amiss with the situation, wanting to stay out of things and find a chance to escape. On the one hand, it was the third princess of the great Zhou dynasty, he did not dare to offend her. On the other hand, although it seemed like the other party was a cultivator of Azure Frost sect, his background did not seem simple. More importantly, Junhao was at 7-meridian foundation establishment, Xiaofan did not dare offend him. How unlucky! He cursed internally. Junhao's gaze shifted toward Xiaofan as he asked murderously with a cold glint in his eyes, Xiaofan, whose side are you on? He was straightforward, leaving Xiaofan with nowhere out at all. If Xiaofan chose to be on Junhao's side, once this matter was exposed, he would definitely be hunted down in the territory of the great Zhou dynasty and would be in dire straits. However, if he chose to be on Ji Yaoxue's side, he would be faced with a fierce battle right away. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they were all at 6-meridian foundation establishment, they had little chance of winning against Junhao who was at 7-meridian foundation establishment. Right then, a cultivator walked over from the tunnel, his feet did not touch the ground and he was like a ghost. Xiaofan was scared out of his wits. Wearing white robes, that person's face was frightfully pale and his skin was pale. Reeking of death, those listless eyes that resembled dead fishes bulged out in a bloodshot manner, looking extremely terrifying. Bang! 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 Heavy footsteps approached. A tall and mighty figure followed right after and arrived. A full 10 feet tall, he was silent and wore black robes with a hood that covered his body tightly. This was like a guardian of hell. The expressions of the two great Zhou guards changed slightly as they subconsciously gulped, trying hard to compose themselves. Against the black-robed cultivator, the two of them seemed like children. Both of them turned their attention over. Most of the black-robed cultivator's face was covered by the hood, revealing only his chin such that it was hard to catch his appearance. Initially, Xiaofan was still hesitant. However, he made up his mind after the black-robed cultivator appeared and suddenly said, "Senior brother Jun, I'm definitely on your side." Junhao's eyes flickered with a mocking expression as he nodded. "Very good, at least you can read the situation." Xiaofan heaved a sigh of relief. The reason for his decision was because he could sense danger exuding from the black-robed cultivator. By standing on Jun Hao's side, he was exposing himself to the danger of being hunted by the great Zhou dynasty. However, he would have to die right away if he chose to stand on Ji Yaoshue's side. Jun Hao had already composed himself. Arriving before the white-robed cultivator, he bowed deeply and respectfully. "Thank you for rushing over, Senior Brother Li. I'm afraid I'll have to depend on you to dispel this formation." "Yes." The white-robed cultivator raised his head slightly. Si Yutong's gaze shimmered and he frowned to himself. He noticed something odd. Jun Hao merely greeted the white-robed cultivator and was oblivious to the tall black-robed cultivator at the back. However, Si Yutong could clearly feel that the black-robed cultivator was scarier. How could that be? Turning around, Jun Hao could not conceal the killing intent in his eyes as he glared at the two great Zhou guards and said coldly, "Si Yutong, it's time for you to shine." "All right." With no other way out, Si Yutong could only abide by Jun Hao. "Go!" Slapping his storage bag, Si Yutong hollered softly and summoned a supreme-grade flying sword. A resplendent glow filled the sword in a bedazzling manner. The two great Zhou guards retaliated as well, churning their spirit energies with all their might. 6 spirit meridians appeared as they summoned their flying swords to fight against Si Yutong. Cling! Clang! The 3 of their flying swords collided repeatedly in midair, causing sparks to fly. The guards who were qualified to enter the ancient battlefield were carefully selected from the capital of Great Zhou. Since the 3 of them were at 6 Meridian Foundation establishment, Si Yutong did not have any advantage against the 2 guards and was instead losing slowly. Humph! Waving his robes, Jun Hao sent forth a green azure chi that condensed into a gigantic palm in midair. The temperature on the battlefield dipped instantly. The 2 great Zhou guards were shocked. Both of them could not deal with the full might of a spirit art released by a 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Azure Frost Palm? Right then, a cold laugh sounded from within the stone chamber. The stone door opened and Ji Yaoshue strode out. Waving her robes in the same manner, she conjured hand seals and let out an azure frost chi, creating a massive palm. The 2 palms collided in midair. Boom! Spirit chi dissipated evenly. 7 Meridian Foundation establishment? Jun Hao's eyes lit up and he could not help but clap his hands in laughter. Well, well. To think that you've also unlocked your 7th Spirit Meridian, Yaoshue. It's no wonder why you're my junior sister. Ji Yaoshue was wearing the long pale yellow dress. Although she was merely standing there, she exuded an air of nobility that was filled with dominance. "Princess, hurry back. It's dangerous here," one of the great Zhou guards urged after seeing Ji Yaoshue leave the stone chamber. "Yaoshue, you're finally willing to come out." Jun Hao whipped out a flying sword from his storage bag and shook his head. "However, since you walked out of that stone chamber, you don't have to return anymore. Go." The sword tore through the air, turning into a streak of light that arrived instantly. Ji Yaoshue did not panic at all as she circulated the spirit sea in her dantian with her full might. Her 7 Meridian spirit energy surged wildly as she similarly brought out a flying sword and fought against Jun Hao. Since they were both at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment and had cultivated in Azure Frost sect before, they were rather familiar with one another's moves. In a short period of time, neither could overpower the other. On the other hand, although the 2 great Zhou guards had the advantage against Si Yutong, they could not kill the latter right away either. The fight between the 5 of them carried on in that stalemate. Spirit chi surged furiously on the battlefield and sword chi was merciless, but no victor could be decided. Jun Hao became increasingly frustrated. Distracted momentarily, his arm was cut by Ji Yaoshue's flying sword and blood flowed out. A bunch of trash. The white-robed cultivator that was initially standing at the side was finally getting impatient. Waving his hand gently, he said in a cold manner, "Go and kill those 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and capture that woman alive." The black-robed cultivator that was originally standing motionlessly behind him walked forward. Bang! 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 With each step taken, the cave abode would quake violently in a terrifying manner. Roar! Charging in the direction of the battlefield, the black-robed cultivator suddenly let out a deafening roar. Shing! His black robes were ripped apart, turning into countless pieces of cloth that danced in the air. The black-robed cultivator revealed his true appearance. Apart from the white-robed cultivator, everyone else present was shocked and their pupils constricted, their scalps prickled as they felt their hairs stand on ends. What's that monster? One of the great Zhou guards asked with a trembling voice. His limbs had gone cold. Even though Tianhuang knew what the black-robed cultivator was right from the start, he was still shocked when he caught sight of his true appearance and nearly lost control of his flying sword. Chapter 468, Wow! So amazing? Chapter 468, Wow! So amazing? That was no cultivator. To be precise, that wasn't a living being. The monster reeked of a rotting stench and his skin was black. Muscles bulged from his body in distinct pieces, looking as though they were washed with steel liquid. Long fingernails as sharp as knives shone with a ghastly green color. They were clearly carrying poison. There were no pupils in his eyes and they were completely white, looking extremely frightening. When the monster roared, green veins popped up on its necks and face, akin to small little snakes that were crawling on the surface of its skin. It bared a pair of bloodied fangs and its face was shuddering and menacing. This was a living corpse. None of them present had witnessed such methods before. Not only was the corpse resurrected, it was controlled by someone and let out such a terrifying aura. Even though she was the princess of Great Zhou, Ji Yaoxue was also greatly shocked and her face was pale. Bang! 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 The corpse strode in huge steps towards the battlefield. Sensing that the situation was bad, Tianhuang and Xiaofan had already withdrawn themselves from the battle long ago, afraid that they would be implicated. Go! One of the great Zhou guards summoned his flying sword while the other conjured hand seals, producing blazing fireballs that shot at the corpse. As though it did not see them, the corpse did not slow down at all. The 2 great Zhou guards were slightly relieved when they saw that, thinking to themselves, at the end of the day, it's just a walking corpse with no brains that doesn't know how to dodge at all. Clang! Before they could finish their thoughts, the flying sword had already pierced the corpse's chest. However, the sound of metal clashing echoed. The flying sword was repelled. The fireball landed on the corpse and lasted for 2 breaths before extinguishing. In the billowing smoke, not only was the corpse fine, it turned even more violent. The 2 of them were dumbfounded and their eyes widened. At the same time, Ji Yaoxue's flying sword descended. Shining with 4 bedazzling spirit patterns, its sword chi was cold and it pierced the corpse's head with its sharpness. Clang! Another crisp sound rang out accompanied by a chain of sparks. The flying sword was repelled as well. A faint white scar merely appeared on the corpse's glabella, its skin was not even scratched. Ji Yaoxue was gravely shocked. She was at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment and she possessed a supreme-grade flying sword. Yet, she could not even scratch the skin of the corpse with her full power. How was she going to fight this corpse that weapons could not pierce and fire and water could not damage? Before she could finish her thoughts, the corpse arrived in front of the 2 great Zhou guards within a few strides. Reaching out, it crushed both of their heads instantly. The 2 guards did not get a second chance to attack at all. Swash! Ji Yaoxue summoned her flying sword once more and this time round, they were aimed for the corpse's eyes. She believed that everything had their weaknesses no matter how strong they were. Suddenly, the corpse glared at the incoming sword and reached out. He grabbed it and placed it in front of his mouth before spitting a ball of oily green smoke at it. The moment the smoke touched the blade, the spirit light of the supreme-grade flying sword dimmed. Ji Yaoshue's expression changed as she lost her connection to the supreme-grade flying sword. Not good, she thought to herself. Turning around to retreat back to the stone chamber, a black shadow had already arrived before her. Swoosh! An evil gust of wind burst forth, suffocating her. Ji Yaoshue merely felt her chest turn stuffy and her head spin. The corpse was filled with poison from head to toe and gave off a rotting stench. Any cultivator that breathed in that rotting stench without any precautions would definitely be affected. The corpse reached out with its massive hands, aiming at Ji Yaoshue's shoulders to capture her alive. All of a sudden, the pale yellow dress that she was wearing shone with 4 bright spirit patterns. With the obstruction, the corpse failed to grab Ji Yaoshue's shoulder right away. She jolted to her senses and hurriedly retreated a couple of steps back, entering the stone chamber in a flash before shutting its stone doors. Roar! The corpse was enraged and roared, slamming violently at the stone doors. Boom! While the stone doors shook violently, they did not open. Buzz! At the same time, as though it sensed something, a series of formation lights appeared on the ground of the entrance of the stone chamber. Another formation was activated at the entrance of the stone chamber, engulfing the corpse within. Sword chi buzzed incessantly. Sharp sword chi shot forth from within the formation and stabbed the corpse repeatedly from all directions in a resplendent dazzle. Trapped in the formation, the corpse flung its arms and collided against the sword chi from all around, roaring in endless rage. Not long after, the skin of the black corpse was already torn against the relentless attacks of the sword chi and it was injured all over, leaking with gooey, sticky blood that was extremely pungent. What a terrifying killing formation! Junhao felt a sense of fear and broke out in cold sweat upon seeing that. That was clearly a trump card left behind by Su Zimo. Apart from the defense formation, there was a killing formation around the stone chamber. Previously, if Junhao had attacked forcibly, he would have been caught in the killing formation and would most likely have died after being pierced by the countless swords. Su Zimo, you're savage. Junhao grit her teeth and endless hatred flooded his eyes. Although the white-robed cultivator felt a little pained looking at the corpse's skin getting damaged by the sword chi, he did not appear to be worried. While the might of the killing formation was terrifying and might even be able to kill an 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator, it did not manage to hurt the corpse fundamentally and those were merely superficial wounds. As the filthy blood of the corpse flowed onto the ground, the formation patterns were gradually tainted. The might of the killing formation was diminishing. The formation light was also dimming gradually. Before long, the killing formation was dispelled entirely and the corpse broke free. By now, it had descended into a complete frenzy as it charged at the stone chamber. Bang! 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 The light of the defensive formation shone repeatedly, withstanding the attacks of the corpse one after another. With nowhere else to retreat to within the stone chamber, Ji Yaoshue found herself calming down instead. In her heart, she knew that the power produced by the corpse was not weaker than an 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Coupled with its corrosive aura, poison and blood, the formation would not be able to hold out for much longer. If the formation was dispelled, she would commit suicide right here. A princess of Great Zhou would definitely not allow herself to be humiliated by others. As though it did not know the meaning of fatigue, the corpse fought for an entire day and night without stopping. The light of the formation had dimmed considerably. The defensive formation could be broken through at any moment. The situation was determined and Ji Yaoshue was on the brink of calamity with nowhere to escape. Xiaofan walked to Junhao's side and let out a fawning smile. Sweeping his gaze past the white-robed cultivator, he asked, "Senior brother Jun, What's the name of that fellow Daoist? You're not qualified to know. Junhao replied, all you have to know is that he hails from one of Tianhuang mainland super sects and is the strongest paragon of the Foundation establishment realm. Why yes. Xiaofan nodded repeatedly with a fearful expression. Senior brother Li's combat strength is unparalleled and he's practically invincible amongst all Foundation establishment cultivators. He can suppress all enemies in Tianhuang mainland, and even if the ancient emperors were at Foundation establishment realm, they might not be a match for senior brother Li. Junhao spilled out songs of praises without any shame or embarrassment. Although he could tell that Junhao was sucking up to him, the white-robed cultivator enjoyed it nevertheless. After a momentary pause, the white-robed cultivator said, that's not for sure. The human emperor's palace appeared some time back and the monster incarnate of divine Phoenix Island appeared. That man is not to be underestimated. Junhao hurriedly remarked, you don't have to be humble, senior brother Li. I still believe nobody in the Foundation establishment realm is your match in a one-on-one battle. Yes. Nodding, the white-robed cultivator declared with pride, I don't even have to do it myself if it's a one-on-one battle. This steel corpse that I cultivated is more than enough to kill that monster incarnate of divine Phoenix Island. Wow, so amazing. Suddenly, a voice sounded in everyone's ears, carrying a hint of sarcasm and mockery. Chapter 469, Test it with your life. Chapter 469, Test it with your life. Both Junhao and Xiaofan frowned in confusion. Although that voice sounded rather familiar, the two of them were not certain. Rather, that person should have been dead. Could he have ventured into the depths of the ancient battlefield and yet returned alive? Who's there? The white-robed cultivator's slightly bulged eyes shifted and his expression turned grim with killing intent. Right after, his eyes flashed with confusion as well. That voice did not come from the cave abode. From the sound of it, it seemed like it came from 5 kilometers away. That was the confusing portion. If he was 5 kilometers away, how could he hear their conversation in the cave abode? Was his hearing that powerful? Could omnipresent hearing truly exist in the world? All of a sudden, the sound of clothes fluttering sounded, approaching from afar at an extremely fast speed. It was as though it arrived at the cave abode's entrance in the blink of an eye. What a swift movement technique! The white-robed cultivator's heart skipped a beat as he turned to glare at the tunnel. It was the same for Junhao and Xiaofan, both of them wanted to know if it was that man who had arrived. Before long, a green figure appeared in the tunnel, striding over with steady footsteps. Although he looked calm, there was an indescribable aura around him. The intruder had elegant features, looking like a scholar. It was Su Zimo who had rushed over from Xiantian City. Junhao's eyes narrowed with cold killing intent as he declared hatefully, it's truly you. You're not dead? Xiaofang's mouth was slightly agape as he uttered in disbelief. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he swept his gaze past the two of them without pausing. Right after, he looked at the mighty corpse that was ramming against the stone chamber and his eyes flashed. Raising his brow, he seemed to have recalled something. He paused for a brief moment before fixing his gaze on the white-robed cultivator. After entering the cave abode, Su Zimo did not say anything and merely surveyed his surroundings. However, for some unknown reason, that simple action of his caused the white-robed cultivator to feel an unprecedented sense of pressure. Su Zimo's eyes were bright and deep. His gaze was nonchalant and it seemed like he could control everything with a single look. Even without saying anything, he was exuding a dominance that surpassed everything. It was an aura that could not be faked. This was something that was created through the corpses and blood of countless paragons and was revealed subconsciously. The white-robed cultivator was expressionless, but he felt uneasy. Suddenly, he retreated a couple of steps back and shouted softly, "Come back." The corpse came to a sudden halt and paused for a moment before taking huge strides towards the white-robed cultivator. It stood beside the latter and glared at Su Zimo murderously. By now, the wounds inflicted by the killing formation had already formed scabs and were no longer bleeding. "Senior brotherly, this is Su Zimo." Junhao commented hurriedly, "He's the one who injured your battle corpse." The killing formation outside the stone chamber was also set up by him. The white-robed cultivator did not say anything and merely glared at Su Zimo with a grim expression. Indifferently, Su Zimo said, "One of the 5 heretical doctrines, corpse refinement cult." After entering the depths of the ancient battlefield, he gained a good understanding of the various factions on Tianhuang mainland thanks to Tang Yu and the others. As such, he recognized the white-robed cultivator's background instantly. Corpse refinement cult cultivators were extremely recognizable as they would always bring along a battle corpse that they refined using their sect's secret skills to fight for them. Looking at the white-robed cultivator, Su Zimo asked with a fake smile, "Since you were bragging about how strong you were earlier on, why didn't you go take on the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island beneath the human emperor's palace?" The white-robed cultivator's expression turned terrible. Naturally, he wanted to fight for the human emperor's inheritance when the human emperor's palace appeared as well. His battle corpse was invincible against weapons and could not be damaged by water or fire. In terms of strength, it was no weaker than 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. However, corpse refinement cult cultivators had a fatal weakness. Compared to their mighty battle corpses, they were not strong. If they lost the protection of their battle corpse, they would most definitely die against 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Paragons from all over the place were gathered beneath the human emperor's palace. Needless to think, it would definitely be an unprecedented battle royale. There was no way his battle corpse would be able to protect him entirely in that sort of battle royale, and it would be hard for him to survive. After hesitating for a long time, the white-robed cultivator decided to give up on the human emperor's palace. Later on, it was proven that his decision was the right one as well. It was said that almost half the paragons who fought in that bloodied battle beneath the human emperor's palace were dead and most of them were crippled. It was extremely tragic. The white-robed cultivator harumphed coldly. It was a battle royale beneath the human emperor's palace. If it was a one-on-one battle, the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island might not be my match. "Oh?" Su Zimo raised his brow. "Who are you? What sect are you from?" the white-robed cultivator asked instead. Junhao explained hurriedly, "Don't worry, senior brotherly, this is merely a disciple of a small sect in the Great Zhou dynasty. He has no backing and he was merely at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment half a year ago." Compared to factions such as super sects and the 5 heretical doctrines, Ethereal Peak could truly only be considered as a small sect. The white-robed cultivator frowned slightly when he heard Junhao's words. If this guy was at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment half a year ago, even if he had heavenly-defying cultivation speed and made use of the Meridian unlocking elixir, he would only be at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment at best. In the worst-case scenario, even if he was at 8 Meridian Foundation establishment, so what? This was someone from a small sect without any backing. The foundations of small sects were not strong and they had limited secret skills. How strong could this guy be? Could he have judged wrongly? Gradually, the white-robed cultivator's expression turned cold as he waved his hand. "Go, check out the skills of this fellow Daoist." The corpse acknowledged by roaring with a torrential aura before chairing over in huge strides. Compared to the tall and mighty corpse, Su Zimo could be considered as a thin weakling. It seemed as though he wouldn't even be able to withstand a single push of the corpse's finger. However, Su Zimo's expression was unchanged and he merely smiled against the incoming corpse. Clang! Unknowingly, a blood-colored saber had already appeared in his hands. The saber trembled with a torrential blood chi. "Test my skills?" With a razor-sharp gaze, Su Zimo said coolly, "Test it with your life." Boom! Before his words were finished, Su Zimo had already made a huge stride. The moment his stride landed, a series of dense cracks appeared on the ground beneath him. In a split second, the entire place shook and the cave abode quaked violently. Dust filled the place continuously and it seemed like the cave could topple at any moment. Everyone present felt their hearts skip a beat. Su Zimo channeled his spirit energy and instantly, the spirit sea in his dantian surged and created terrifying waves. One after another, spirit meridians shone brightly beneath his green robes as spirit energy surged rampantly. 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Junhao and Xiyutang were astonished as they exclaimed. Swoosh! Su Zimo slashed out and a blood beam expanded, landing on the head of the corpse like a blazing blood sun. The corpse could not dodge in time and could only tilt its head slightly. Blood Quencher sliced down along the corpse's shoulder and cut downwards heavily. Its blade let out a jarring sound as it sliced through the muscles and bones, as though it was cutting a metallic object. Gooey, filthy blood gushed out. That slash almost cut the corpse into 2 halves. Blood Quencher only slowed down in its tracks after cutting into the corpse's chest. After it was blocked by Blood Quencher, the corpse could barely advance. Although Su Zimo seemed frail and skinny, a casual slash from him was enough to send forth a shuddering power that even the corpse that was invulnerable against weapons, water and fire could not withstand. The white-robed cultivator's expression turned paler as his figure swayed for a moment. Chapter 470, Meet Sludge. Chapter 470, Meet Sludge. In Tianhuang Mainland, be it the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects or 6 Buddhist sects, there were extremely few sects that managed to pass on their legacies and remain standing from the ancient era till now. Among them, countless top factions were drowned in the sands of time, leaving behind nothing but ruins and legends. Corpse Refinement Cult was one of the rare few super sects that managed to survive from the ancient era till now. Legend in the cultivation world even has it that the roots of Corpse Refinement Cult can be traced back to the primordial era, the brutish period of time where the thousands of races reigned and humans were weak and enslaved. There were countless secret skills in Corpse Refinement Cult and within them, there was even an ancient supreme sutra called the Corpse Classic. The Corpse Classic contained many secret skills, even the descriptions for the method of cultivating a battle corpse alone were plenty. Battle corpses were also graded by levels: Iron Corpse, Bronze Corpse, Silver Corpse, Golden Corpse. For Foundation Establishment cultivators and golden cores of Corpse Refinement Cult, they could only refine iron corpses. Bronze corpses required Corpse Refinement Cult cultivators to be of nascent soul realm and to cultivate an essence spirit before they could be refined. For each battle corpses, the deeper the color, the more power they possessed and the stronger they were. The power of the white-robed cultivator's battle corpse was enough to fight against 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators. Furthermore, the battle corpse was not only invulnerable to weapons, water and fire, it even possessed poison. Even 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators won't be able to injure the core of the battle corpse. There was no way the white-robed cultivator would have expected a seemingly delicate cultivator to nearly slice his battle corpse into half with a single casual slash. How terrifying was that strength? A trace of panic flickered through the white-robed cultivator's slightly bulged eyes. Immediately, as though he made some sort of a resolve, the white-robed cultivator conjured hand seals and channeled a secret skill of his sect. Biting his tongue gently, he spat out a mouthful of essence blood that spilled onto the battle corpse's wounds. Heal! The white-robed cultivator shouted softly. Instantly, the frightening injury on the battle corpse started healing at a visible speed as greenish-black meat grew and intertwined together. The battle corpse roared with immense ferocity. At the same time, the aura of the white-robed cultivator turned extremely weak and his gaze dimmed. Swaying to one side, he seemed like he could collapse at any moment. He slapped his storage bag and took out an elixir before swallowing it. It was only then that he recovered some vitality. It was clearly a secret skill similar to blood escape. By sacrificing his body's vitality, he repaired the battle corpse's wounds and triggered it to produce even greater combat strength. The battle corpse reached out with its hands and grabbed Blood Quencher's blade. Blood Quencher was drowned by the endless filthy blood as it was stuck in the battle corpse's body. Gradually, the light on its blade dimmed. Harumphing coldly, Su Zimo withdrew his saber with strength. The battle corpse chose to let the blade slice its palms than to relinquish its grip. Furthermore, it even lunged forward with the momentum, spitting out a ball of oily green smoke that was extremely nauseating. "Watch out!" Ji Yaoshua warned from within the stone chamber. Earlier on, the corpse's smoke had already destroyed her supreme-grade flying sword. Not only that, the corpse even opened its mouth and bared its bloody fangs, biting toward Su Zimo's neck like a wild beast. Su Zimo frowned and released his Blood Quencher before retreating. It wasn't because he was afraid of the smoke and those fangs. The corpse was truly way too disgusting that Su Zimo did not wish to touch it with his hands. Su Zimo's retreat revealed an opening in the tunnel momentarily. The eyes of the white-robed cultivator lit up. In truth, he had already thought of retreating the moment Su Zimo attacked with the slash earlier on. While it was meant for the corpse, he knew that he wouldn't be able to survive that attack even if he had 10 lives. When he saw Su Zimo dodge to the side, the white-robed cultivator moved in a flash and sped towards the tunnel since he was unwilling to battle. Su Zimo's eyes flashed with mockery when he saw that. Swiping his storage bag, a huge squarish golden seal appeared in his palms. The Incarnate spirit weapon, Coiling Dragon Seal. It was extremely easy for Su Zimo to kill this corpse refinement cult cultivator. As long as he channeled his bloodline and made use of his spirit wings together with divine steed fleeting, he would be able to wrap around the battle corpse and strike that person to death. However, earlier on, Su Zimo had a thought and recalled this treasure he had just obtained. He was also curious as to how powerful the legendary Incarnate spirit weapons were, let alone one that was given to him by the human emperor. Go! Tossing the coiling dragon seal upwards, he pointed and a stream of spirit energy was injected into it from his finger. The coiling dragon seal expanded rapidly and shone with a golden radiance. Hovering in midair like a blazing sun, it was bedazzling and let out a shuddering aura, exuding endless might. The feral battle corpse suddenly seemed as pathetic as an ant against the coiling dragon seal. The coiling dragon seal descended rapidly. Boom! A loud bang sounded when it rammed against the battle corpse's head. Crack! 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 Right after, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The coiling dragon seal merely paused for a brief moment before continuing down. With a thud, the battle corpse that was a full 10 feet tall was crushed into a pile of foul-smelling meat sludge by the coiling dragon seal, spreading all over the ground without any body left. The white-robed cultivator was about to rush into the tunnel when a blindingly bright seal crashed down, blocking the exit. He spun around hurriedly and a pile of meat sludge splattered onto his pale face. The white-robed cultivator's eyes were widened and his mind went blank, almost shocked silly. In the cultivation world, anyone who wanted to defeat corpse refinement cult cultivators had to try their best to avoid the battle corpse while attacking the actual cultivator. That was because the battle corpses were the indestructible weapons of corpse refinement cult cultivators. Nobody within the same cultivation realm could defeat their battle corpses. If anyone was embroiled in a battle against their battle corpses and could not get out, they would either end up being killed or exhausted to their deaths. That was because battle corpses did not know fatigue. Even if they were completely injured, their strength would not diminish. However, it was different for cultivators. Humans had a limit to their stamina. The white-robed cultivator had cultivated for dozens of years and had been through endless battles against various paragons. However, he had never come across anyone that fought as fiercely as Su Zimo. Notwithstanding the fact that Su Zimo was fighting the corpse itself, he even almost managed to slice it into two with the first attack. Right after, he even turned the battle corpse into a pile of meat sludge with the second attack. Things had ended just like that. The white-robed cultivator was stunned at the moment. A deathly silence filled the air. Initially, Junhao and Xiaofan wanted to attack Su Zimo together with the battle corpse. But now, they were rooted silly to the spot, the corners of their eyes twitching and their bodies trembling slightly. That was a Incarnate spirit weapon. The two of them could clearly see that the huge golden seal that Su Zimo summoned at the end shone with 6 spirit patterns. It was obvious that it was a Incarnate spirit weapon. The deadly poison chi within the battle corpse's flesh was filthy and could destroy weapons and Dharma treasures. Even Ji Yaoshue's supreme-grade flying sword could not escape the fate of being destroyed. But now, the light on the golden seal did not diminish at all even when it was tainted by the battle corpse's blood and flesh. In fact, it shone more intensely, exuding the dominance of an emperor that looked down on the world. A deep look of envy filled Junhao's eyes. I can be as domineering as that if I get my hands on that treasure. Chapter 471, All Dead. Chapter 471, All Dead. Su Zimo's expression changed slightly. The might of the coiling dragon seal had exceeded his expectations. The power that was released was enough to threaten an early-stage golden core. More importantly, an foundation establishment cultivator's Dantian was still in the form of a spirit sea and had yet to form a core. Only golden cores could release the true might of Incarnate spirit weapons. Su Zimo was looking forward to how amazing the coiling dragon seal would be at that time. There was a squeaking sound. The stone doors opened and Ji Yaoshue came forth. Their eyes met. Su Zimo smiled and nodded, reassuring her. Instantly, Ji Yaoshue blushed and pursed a smile in return. Su Zimo beckoned gently and the coiling dragon seal shrank into a small, intricate seal before turning into a streak of light that returned to his storage bag. Walking slowly to the exit of the tunnel, he pushed down with his ankle and his blood quencher returned to his palm. Throughout the entire process, the white-robed cultivator, Junhao, and Xiaofan did not dare to move at all and kept quiet out of fear. Every single action and gaze of Su Zimo caused the three of them to feel immense pressure. Their hearts raced fiercely, as if they could die at any moment. This was an almost invincible aura. Their gazes flickered and their minds were bothered by the same thought. How should they escape? The coiling dragon seal did not merely suppress a battle corpse, but also the final bit of determination in the three of them to want to retaliate. The white-robed cultivator was the first to speak. A rare smile was squeezed out of his dreadfully glum face as he cupped his fists. Fellow Daoist, you are truly strong. I'm very impressed. I'm nothing compared to you. You're someone who can even suppress the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island. Su Zimo looked at the white-robed cultivator with a fake smile. Bearing an awkward expression, the white-robed cultivator forced a chuckle. You're joking, fellow Daoist. You're the one who's able to suppress the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island with your skills. I'm far inferior. Su Zimo did not reply and waved his saber. Instantly, Blood Quencher shot forth with a murderous blood beam once more. Blood Quencher was a perfect spirit weapon that was infused with Su Zimo's blood after all. Although it was tainted by the battle corpse's filthy blood, its sharpness could not be hidden. Sensing Su Zimo's killing intent, the white-robed cultivator's heart skipped a beat as he remarked hurriedly, "You can't kill me." "Oh?" Su Zimo uttered without raising his head. Composing himself, the white-robed cultivator said in a deep voice, "You should know the status of corpse refinement cult in Tianhuang Mainland. If you kill me, you'll be hunted down by the sect." "Ha! Even if I kill you, who would know? Su Zimo smiled gently. The white-robed cultivator was speechless. On the other hand, Junhao and Xiaofan felt a chilling intent. In other words, what Su Zimo meant was that he was going to kill them all. After killing the three of them, news of this would never ever be spread. There was something else that Su Zimo kept to himself. Corpse refinement cult. I've even killed quite a few paragons from the Immortal, Fiend and Buddhist sects. You're just one of them. Clang. The blade shuddered and a startling blood beam flashed. When Su Zimo attacked once more, the gigantic blade seemed extremely agile in his hands, his slash forward caused ripples in the void. The white-robed cultivator's expression changed starkly. While that slash did not seem fast, there was an inescapable feeling to it. For corpse refinement cult cultivators, losing their battle corpses was as good as losing half of their combat strength. He could not deal with the terrifying saber technique of the Saber Emperor's Sea Calming Manual. A single moment of distraction and he felt his throat go cold, followed by a ripping pain. A red scar appeared on his throat, turning bigger and more defined. The next moment, a blood mist spewed out. A strange sound came from the depths of the white-robed cultivator's throat as he let out an indignant expression. Collapsing stiffly forward, the light in his eyes dimmed without any life. His throat was slit with a single slash. After killing the corpse refinement cult cultivator, Su Zimo turned around and walked towards Junhao and Xiaofan without hesitation. It was the idea of Junhao and the others. I had no choice as well. That's why I chose the wrong path. When he saw that the situation was amiss, Xiaofan knelt on the ground with a thud. His hand was placed seemingly casually on his storage bag as he bawled without a single shred of dignity as a cultivator. Wiping his snot, Xiaofan said with a quivering voice, "Fellow Taoist Su, please give me a chance." Xiaofan did not have any bit of pity at all towards a fence-sitter like Xiaofan. Today, this man could kneel down and cry before him in order to survive. Tomorrow, this man could stab him in the back instead. Arriving before Xiaofan, Su Zimo looked down and replied indifferently, "At times, once you choose the wrong path, there's no way back." Xiaofan's final hope was dashed after hearing Su Zimo's reply. His hand was still on his storage bag. But now, a dagger with a cold glint had suddenly appeared in his palms. Xiaofan's sobs came to a stop as his expression darkened. With a venomous gaze, he said coldly, "Since you won't allow me to live, I'll kill you first." Grabbing his dagger, Xiaofan stabbed toward Su Zimo's chest. This was a complete ambush. However, his thoughts could not escape from Su Zimo's spirit perception. The moment Xiaofan stood up, Su Zimo's palm descended from above and landed heavily on the former's head. Piak! As though it was tofu, Xiaofan's head was splattered and he died on the spot without a single word. The moment Xiaofan attacked, Junhao made up his mind and channeled his spirit energy with all his might as well. In a flash, 7 spirit meridians lit up as he charged towards Ji Yaoxue, who was at the entrance of the stone chamber. Right now, she was his only shot at living. As long as he could hold her hostage, he could talk terms with Su Zimo. As Junhao charged, he realized that Ji Yaoxue was motionless and merely looked at him quietly. There was a trace of mockery and pity in her eyes. All of a sudden, from the side of his eyes, Junhao caught sight of a blood light shooting towards him at lightning speed. It crackled and was shuddering. The moment Xiaofan attacked, Su Zimo flung out his blood quencher. Junhao did not have time to react and merely caught sight of the scarlet flash. Right after, an immense pain came from beneath his ribs as he was sent flying by a powerful impact. Clang! Su Zimo's blood quencher cut through Junhao and pinned the latter tightly against the stone walls. The impact was immensely strong and the saber was still shaking after embedding itself in the stone walls. Junhao's eyes and mouth were widened as fresh blood gushed out uncontrollably. The saber had not only penetrated his body, but also destroyed his organs and cut off his life. You! Raising his arm with much struggle, Junhao pointed at Su Zimo, as if he wanted to say something. After a momentary pause, his head tilted to the side and he died with opened eyes. In less than 10 minutes, all three of them were dead. Chapter 472, Stir on Tianhuang Mainland. Chapter 472, Stir on Tianhuang Mainland. Zimo, you've saved me once more. Ji Yaoxue beamed brightly and quipped, I won't be able to clear my debt to you in this lifetime. Su Zimo smiled as well. There's no need to speak of such things between us. 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Seems like you've gotten quite a bit of opportunities in the depths of the ancient battlefield. Indeed, I've gotten some. It had to be said that Su Zimo had truly benefited way too much in this ancient battlefield expedition. Notwithstanding the inheritances and treasures, his cultivation realm gained through this 1 year in the ancient battlefield was already enough to make up for dozens of years of cultivation on Tianhuang Mainland. Suddenly, Ji Yaoxue's expression changed as she asked, Xiaoning and the others. Su Zimo's group had 6 people when they left. Now that he was the only one who returned, Ji Yaoxue had a bad feeling about things. Don't worry. Su Zimo waved his hand. All of them received their own opportunities and joined some older and more powerful sections. In fact, some of them might have already left the Tianhuang North region. Xiaoning's Elixir Yang sect was located far away in the middle continent. Tianhuang Mainland was boundless and vast. If a foundation establishment cultivator wanted to travel from the North region to the middle continent, they would have to be on the road day and night for dozens of years even without resting. That was also without taking into account the possible dangers they might encounter along the way. In reality, it was something that was difficult even for golden cores too. Only nascent souls could protect themselves well enough to attempt to travel out from the North region and roam everywhere. It was likely impossible for the siblings to meet one another in the near future after this separation. That was the reason why Su Zimo wanted Night Spirit to stay by Xiaoning's side and look after her. As for Little Fatty, Leng Ro, Ji Chengtian and Shi Jian, they were worlds apart as well. It was unknown if he would still have the chance to meet them in this lifetime. At that thought, Su Zimo could not help but feel slightly emotional and wistful. Zimo, you're still worried about Blood Crow Palace taking revenge, right? Ji Yaoxue was extremely smart and after slight contemplation, she understood why everyone went their separate ways. Su Zimo had killed the young master of the Blood Crow Palace and even nearly caused the palace lord himself to die in the primordial ruins. The feud between him and them was already irreconcilable. That day, in the palace, right under the nose of the Emperor of Great Zhou, the Blood Crow King declared that all the disciples of Ethereal Peak would be buried along with the young master. It was obvious how arrogant he was and the amount of backing he had. While it might be a huge calamity for Su Zimo personally, it was also one for Ethereal Peak. Everyone else of Ethereal Peak could leave, but not him. To turn his back and leave after creating such a mess, leaving Ethereal Peak and his eldest brother, Su Hong, in the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty without any care. That was something that Su Zimo's heart would not allow. Zimo, don't worry. I'll help you plead for mercy with Father. Worried that Su Zimo might not take her words for real, Ji Yaoxue continued, if the Blood Crow Palace truly dares to do anything outrageous, the Great Zhou dynasty will definitely not sit by idly and watch. Yes. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. In reality, he knew and could read the situation clearer than anyone. The attitude of the Emperor of Great Zhou towards the Blood Crow King at the sect competition had already made many things clear. Even the Great Zhou dynasty was wary of the Blood Crow Palace's lord. Or rather, it was cautious of the witch race behind it, one of the primordial 9 races. It was almost hopeless to think that the great Zhou dynasty would interfere in the matter. Yaoxue, prepare yourself. We'll head to the teleportation spot and return to the great Zhou dynasty. Alright. With the year in the ancient battlefield about to end, many cultivators were returning to Tianhuang mainland. Some were ecstatic while some were worried. Some cultivators even had a surreal feeling of escaping a great calamity. They could only heal the trauma in their hearts gradually after returning to their sects in Tianhuang mainland. Right after, heavy news started spreading through the super sects of the cultivation world, akin to gigantic boulders tossed into the middle of lakes and creating massive waves. After 1,000 years, the Saber Emperor's inheritance was obtained by a cultivator and the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea vanished. Right, more than 100 cultivators of Poison sect were killed by a single person, and even Malevolent Earth sect and Glass Palace were implicated. How savage! Who is he? What sect or faction is he from? I've got no idea. He didn't wear a sect badge. Some say that he's a meek scholar while others say that he looks menacing. Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect received the news almost instantly and their sect masters were enraged. Both sects sent out multiple cultivators to scout out news of that cultivator's background and location. Before the various sects managed to digest that news, an even more shocking piece of news was spread, causing a shock for the super sects and sending a wave across the entire cultivation world. The Human Emperor's Palace appeared. The successor of Divine Phoenix Island appeared at the Human Emperor's Palace and fought against all the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects together. The paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects worked together? Fufu, Divine Phoenix Island successor, sure is unlucky. He must have died without even a corpse left. Who managed to obtain the Human Emperor's inheritance in the end? That's where you're wrong. He suppressed all the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects single-handedly, and it was an extremely tragic and shocking battle. What? What did you say? The paragons of Azura sect, Heaven Azura sect, Purple Firmament sect, Chaos Essence sect, Clear Wind Temple, Illusion Fiend cult and Formless Monastery are all dead. While the paragons of the other sects managed to survive and escape, some of them had their arms and roots crippled and it would be tough for them to shine in the future. The elders of the various sects received the news at almost the same time and were in shock and disbelief. What about the sealers? There were more than 10 sealers from the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects together. Are they all trashes? As golden cores, can't any of them kill a single Foundation establishment cultivator? Even when 5 sealers joined forces, they failed and died with regrets. Pust. Even sealers failed despite working together. The right hand of Divine Phoenix Island successor is made from a Divine Phoenix bone and possess an immense might. He was severely injured together with the Fiend sect's pure maiden and they entered the Human Emperor's Palace at the same time. Their fates are currently unknown. The elders went silent when they heard that. A long time later, someone sighed deeply. It's a monster incarnate. I don't think it's exaggerated to claim that he's the #1 monster incarnate ever since the ancient times. At the same time, in an unknown location in the Middle Continent, an ancient-looking palace stood erected. A rosy-cheeked old man with a white crown and long robes stood in front of the palace entrance with one hand behind his back. His other hand was in front of him and his fingers were twitching. There was a gray fog that veiled his eyes, making him seem extremely mysterious. Old man, have you divined anything? Behind the old man was a gray-robed man who was slightly plump and had a pale, beardless fan. Holding a folding fan, he asked anxiously. If Su Zimo was here, he would have recognized that this was Lin Xuanji whom he had encountered by chance at the primordial ruins. The old man in front was the storyteller back in the capital of Great Zhou. A long time later, the haze disappeared from the old man's eyes as he frowned while shaking his head. It's true that the Human Emperor's Palace appeared. However, I didn't manage to divine any news of that lad. Strange. Does Divine Phoenix Island truly have such a monster incarnate? The two of them exchanged glances, feeling that there was something odd about this. Sucking his lips, the old man replied, no matter what, the appearance of the human emperor's palace proves that this is going to be a golden era with countless paragons and monster incarnates created. It's very likely that we'll have a situation similar to the ancient era with multiple emperors arising. Of course, with that, there will also be unimaginable trouble. Let's just wait and see. Chapter 473, Arrival of the Storm. Chapter 473, Arrival of the Storm. Deep in the night, in the Great Zhou dynasty. With a bang, a bedazzling column of light lit up in the depths of the palace. Bursting into the skies, it filled the night skies with a resplendent luminescence, attracting countless glares. The geniuses who entered the ancient battlefield have returned. That's right. I wonder how many of the 50 managed to survive. There should be a third of them at the very least. The geniuses selected by the 5 major sects aren't weak. Ethereal peaks Xianyi and Lu Hui, iridescent clouds palaces perfected being Tsang Lang and many other golden cores stood around the column of light expectantly, preparing to await their returning disciples. If nothing went wrong, these cultivators that returned alive from the ancient battlefield would end up being the supports of their sects in the future. The Emperor of Great Zhou stood right at the front with a grim expression, a flicker of worry would appear in the depths of his eyes from time to time. Gradually, 2 figures appeared in the middle of the column of light. As time passed by, the 2 figures became increasingly clear. It was Su Zimo and Ji Yaoxue who had returned. The Emperor heaved a sigh of relief. He was relieved as long as Ji Yaoxue was fine. But immediately after, he frowned and thought to himself, there's only the 2 of them? Although the ancient battlefield was a dangerous place, at least 7 people or so managed to return in previous worst-case scenarios. Now that only 2 of them returned, it was not hard to guess that something big must have happened in the ancient battlefield. Xian Yi and Lu Hui did not have smiles on their faces when they saw that Su Zimo was fine. On the one hand, it was because they were worried about the safety of Ji Qingtian and the others. On the other hand, while it was a good thing that Su Zimo was alive, it may not have been the best choice for him to return to the Great Zhou dynasty. Apart from Ethereal Peak, the golden cores of the other sects looked extremely grim as they strode forward with huge frowns. Perfected being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains sect cupped his fists slightly. Mr. Mo, my disciple, Shi Jian, is a little foolish and isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Did he meet with any accidents? No. He was selected by one of the 5 heretical doctrines, Puppet Sect, and left together with them. Su Zimo shook his head. It's good that he's all right. It's his opportunity to be selected by one of the super sections. How rare, how rare. Perfected being Yun Shan nodded his head in gratification. For the sects of the Great Zhou dynasty, super sects such as the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 heretical doctrines and 4 unorthodox groups were insurmountable mountains. If a disciple of their sect managed to join them, it would be an enormous feat and those sects could not be any happier. For example, with their connection to Shi Jian, Southern Mountains sect would most likely have the massive backing of Puppet sect in the future. What happened in there? Why are you 2 the only ones who have returned? Where are the others? Liang Mao is my personal disciple and he was the number 2 of the talisman ranking. His strength is decent and he has a careful nature, there's no way he could have died. Mr. Mo, did my disciple manage to obtain any opportunities? Many golden cores glared at Su Zimo, asking repeatedly with threatening gazes. Su Zimo frowned with a look of impatience. Everyone, please be silent. Ji Yaoxue stood forward and gestured for silence with both hands. Although she was only a princess, her gesture already possessed the dignity of the royal family. The crowd instantly went silent. In an unhurried manner, Ji Yaoxue recounted the events in the ancient battlefield, including Jun Hao's true identity, Jiang Yu's betrayal and Si Yutang's choice. Everyone was startled and speechless. Nobody expected that this ancient battlefield expedition would have met with such immense dangers. Perfected being Zhang Lang's expression was grim as he narrowed his gaze and sneered, "This is only your side of the story. Who knows if you had conspired with Su Zimo to kill my disciple, Si Yutang? Zhang Lang, are you suspecting my daughter?" The emperor turned slightly and glared at perfected being Zhang Lang expressionlessly. "Ha, I wouldn't dare to." Chuckling, perfected being Zhang Lang looked at Su Zimo deeply and said in a cold voice, "Lad, don't think that you've got the rights to stand shoulder to shoulder with me just because you know how to refine weapons. The grudges between us will have to be settled sooner or later, wait and see." With that, perfected being Zhang Lang laughed sinisterly and left the hall. The other cultivators gradually as well after seeing that they wouldn't be able to obtain any news from the two of them. "Take care." Su Zimo bid farewell to Ji Yaoxue. "You too." Ji Yaoxue's head was slightly lowered and her eyes revealed a trace of reluctance. Su Zimo left the palace together with Lu Hui and Xian Yi. Along with Nian Qi of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop, they boarded a spirit vessel and sped in the direction of Ethereal Peak. A long time after Su Zimo left, Ji Yaoxue was still standing on the spot gazing in the direction he left unwilling to leave. The emperor said softly, "Shuer, although that man is a rare paragon, it's best for you to not have any contact with him." Ji Yaoxue's heart sank when she heard the emperor's tone. Be it Ethereal Peak or Su Zimo, they are most likely doomed against the impending calamity. After traveling for more than half a month, the four of them finally returned to Ethereal Peak. Ever since that battle at Dongling Valley, Su Zimo had left the sect for many years. Now that he had returned once more, he felt deeply emotional. Nian Qi was curious and surveyed the place intently. The four of them stopped instinctively as they arrived at the tall peak in front of the mountain. Back then, this was where Wen Xian and Xian Yi accepted Su Zimo into Ethereal Peak. The memories were fresh as yesterday. Lu Hui remarked, "It's a pity that Wen Xian couldn't wait till you've returned." "No matter. If Wen Xian knows of your current achievements in the afterlife, he'll definitely feel comforted as well." Xian Yi patted Su Zimo on the shoulder encouragingly with a smile. "All right, go take a look around the sect and catch up with everyone. Thereafter, go into seclusion as soon as you can." Xian Yi gazed at the distance with a grim expression as he murmured softly, "I've got a premonition that a storm is about to arrive." Upon returning to Ethereal Peak, Su Zimo visited the disheveled old man first. Thereafter, he visited the sect master and recounted some of the events of the ancient battlefield. In that period of time, Little Crane came over and chirped repeatedly with extreme joy. After not seeing one another for many years, the man and beast were not distant at all and got along like before. Monkey and the spirit tiger had not returned still and their locations and fates were unknown. Senior Crane had already been in seclusion for a year and nothing had happened still. She was the true pillar of support for Ethereal Peak, and if anything happened to her, Ethereal Peak would be destroyed by the impending storm. Su Zimo took a spin around the sect before heading to seclusion. Right now, he was already at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. His aim of entering seclusion was to unlock his 9th Spirit Meridian and become a 9 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. This was an extremely important step that would affect his cultivation path in the future. The firmer his foundation, the better the quality of his condensed golden core and the stronger the golden core phenomenon he would be able to comprehend and obtain. At Extreme Foundation Establishment Realm, Su Zimo's combat strength would also increase in folds. Similarly, he could sense the incoming danger. The only way to tide through the impending storm was by trying his best to raise his cultivation realm. Chapter 474, Crisis. Chapter 474, Crisis. Northwest corner of the Great Zhou Dynasty, Black Crow Mountain. Deep in the forest, in a sinisterly dark area, a blood-stained palace was erected. This day, a piece of news arrived. Master, Su Zimo has returned from the ancient battlefield and has arrived at Ethereal Peak. All right. A blood-robed middle-aged man opened his eyes. They shone with a sinister faint green hue as he said coldly, I want nothing in the radius of 50 kilometers around Ethereal Peak to remain alive. His voice was extremely chilling and spread to every single corner of Black Crow Mountain. Countless blood crows flew out from Black Crow Mountain, shrieking as they swarmed the skies with their sheer numbers and flew towards Ethereal Peak. 2 days later, Iridescent Cloud's Palace. An order was sent forth that mobilized the sect. Wage war against Ethereal Peak. Throughout the years, all the sects in the territory of Great Zhou had harbored coveting thoughts towards Ethereal Peak, Iridescent Cloud's Palace included. Everyone knew that the arrival of the order meant that Iridescent Cloud's Palace was absolutely confident. It was extremely likely that for this battle, a void reversion Dao being, Iridescent Cloud's Palace's founder master, would appear. Perfected being Tsang Lang could not help but roar in laughter. Su Zimo, oh, Su Zimo. Even if you manage to cultivate and join Ethereal Peak, so what? At the end of the day, you still can't escape death. Almost at the same time. News spread within True Fire sect that the sect master was leading an army to wage war against Ethereal Peak. True Fire sect's elder, Sima Ji, clenched his fists tightly. He laughed endlessly in a cold manner and sneered, I've finally waited for this day. Su Zimo, you killed my disciple and shamed me at the sect competition. I'm going to turn you into ashes. Not long after, many cultivators of Southern Mountains sect were mobilized. Azure Frost sect. A few golden cores stood together. Among them was Ji Yaoshue's previous master, perfected being Yi Ning, who had appeared at the sect competition. She sighed after hearing the news of everything outside. Actually, this was a situation that everyone had predicted long ago. Ever since the death of Ethereal Peak's founder master, they were already weakened and their only support was an aging demon beast. The foundation of Ethereal Peak was stronger than the other 4 major sects and they had been established for a long time. Everyone was coveting the countless treasures and secret skills in their sect. Prior to this, the reason why the other sects did not dare to act recklessly was because they were wary of the old immortal crane that was at Void Reversion Realm. Each of the 5 major sects had a Void Reversion expert holding the fort and maintaining the balance. However, all the golden cores and nascent souls of the sects knew that once the old immortal crane was at the end of her lifespan, the balance would be broken and that would be the moment of Ethereal Peak's annihilation. Normally speaking, the other major sects would wait for dozens of years more. But now, with Blood Crow Palace leading the fight, apart from Iridescent Cloud's Palace, True Fire sect and Southern Mountains sect, there would be other sects and cultivators coming forth to Ethereal Peak to take advantage of the situation. It was most likely the same for perfected being Yi Ning's Azure Frost sect. Everyone kicks a man who is down. She sighed gently. She could not help but feel regret when she recalled the scholarly green-robed cultivator at the sect competition. Within 10 days, all the sects within the territory of Great Zhou heard about this and moved one after another. Their target was Ethereal Peak. So what if you're the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou? At the end of the day, you're just doing it for all of us. Hee, notwithstanding the secret skills of Ethereal Peak, there are countless high-grade spirit weapons in Mr. Mo's possession alone. Instantly, the world was moving. Ethereal Peak. Hundreds of golden cores stood in Ethereal Palace, most of them discussing in hushed whispers with grim expressions. Sect Master Ling Yun sat in the middle of everyone, his eyes were closed and he was expressionless. Reporting in, Sect Master. A golden core strode hastily into the hall and said deeply, some blood-eyed crows have suddenly appeared in the forest outside the sect and more are gathering. Got it. Sect Master Ling Yun replied indifferently. He did not open his eyes still. The hearts of many golden cores skipped a beat as they thought to themselves, it's coming. At the end of the day, they could not avoid this crisis still. Initially, this crisis would take another dozens of years to arrive with the backing of the old immortal crane. However, nobody expected that something would change in this period of time. By some freak accident, Su Zimo was embroiled in an irreconcilable feud with Blood Crow Palace's lord, and that resulted in the situation today. It's all Su Zimo's fault. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have made enemies with a sect as strong as Blood Crow Palace. Finally, a golden core could not help but bark with a grim expression. That's right. Someone else declared, Sect Master, let's just hand over Su Zimo. Perhaps it might help to quell the anger of Blood Crow Palace. That's correct. Why should Ethereal Peak die together for Su Zimo's feud? The voices of dissent were growing louder in the hall and many golden cores were moved. Bullshit. The disheveled old man could not help but curse as he blew at his beard with widened eyes. Pointing at the golden cores who spoke, he shouted, how dare you have the cheek to speak of such words? Do you think that we wouldn't have a feud with Blood Crow Palace if Su Zimo wasn't here? Who was the one who killed so many cultivators of our sect in the battle at Dongling Valley? Who was the one who killed Peak Master Wen Xian? The disheveled old man's question caused everyone to go silent. The few golden cores who spoke at the start were quiet as well. Loudly, the disheveled old man hollered, everything else aside, if not for Su Zimo, all our disciples at Dongling Valley would have died in the battle. Instead, you guys are talking about his great deed like it was a mistake. Have your consciences been eaten up by dogs? The disheveled old man's angry scolding reverberated in the hall deafeningly. Xian Yi stood up and said grimly, additionally, back at the sect competition, if Su Zimo hadn't held the fort, Ethereal Peak would have been thoroughly shamed and turned into a joke of the cultivation world of Great Zhou. Countless people would be disheartened if we hand over a disciple as such. That's enough. Opening his eyes, Sect Master Ling Yun said calmly, even if Su Zimo did not contribute as he did and was merely an ordinary disciple of Ethereal Peak, there's no way we will cast him out. Ethereal Peak wouldn't have survived till this day if we sacrificed our disciples for the sake of survival. At the same time, I'm not able to do something like that either. Everyone has their ambitions, and those who want to leave the sect, do it now. I won't stop you. Sect Master Ling Yun swept his gaze across the crowd. Some cultivators cupped their fists and left one after another, but even more chose to stay. Among the crowd, an outstanding girl with withered, yellow hair stood. She smiled gently upon seeing everything unfold and her eyes were bright and moving. Previously, Nian Qi accompanied Su Zimo back to Ethereal Peak and had been listening and observing in secret ever since. She wandered everywhere and had no home since she was young. As such, it was hard for her to trust people. Toward such a foreign environment and these new people, she was conflicted and resistant. However, she did not dare to bother Su Zimo since he was in seclusion. Yet, as time passed by, her impression of this sect gradually changed. There was a group of lovely cultivators within and there were also righteous people. At that moment, after she heard the words of Sect Master Ling Yun, Nian Qi made up her mind that she was going to stay in Ethereal Peak from now on, never forsaking it. Chapter 475, Ignition of the Great Battle. Chapter 475, Ignition of the Great Battle. There were more blood crows gathered at the forest outside, circling above Ethereal Peak in an orderly manner. They formed a gigantic black vortex that covered the skies, like thunderclouds that flickered with scarlet glints. It was extremely pressuring. Darkness fell on Ethereal Peak and it has been 3 days since they saw sunlight. This day, dust billowed from far away followed by a torrential killing intent. The army of cultivators from Blood Crow Palace had arrived. For the past few years, Blood Crow Palace's influence had been expanding and they took over all the sects in the vicinity and grew at a rapid pace. By now, they were as good as a sixth major sect. Coupled with the cruel methods of Blood Crow Palace's lord and his heavenly-defying combat strength, many itinerant cultivators submitted to him one after another. Blood Crow Palace's current strength had already surpassed the 5 major sects. Leaping into the skies, Ethereal Peak's master, Ling Yun, gazed over with a grim expression. The army from Blood Crow Palace was densely packed and there were 10,000 cultivators. Among them, there were 100 nascent souls alone and many of them were notorious itinerant cultivators in the cultivation world of Great Zhou. There were more than 1,000 golden cores. The rest of them were foundation establishment cultivators and there were no Qi refinement warriors. Qi refinement warriors were almost useless in a clash of this level. Any single flying sword, spirit art, or even the shockwave of the ensuing fight was more than enough to kill a Qi refinement warrior. A blood-robed middle-aged man stood at the front of Blood Crow Palace's massive army, looking cold with a faint green hue in his eyes. It was Blood Crow Palace's lord. The palace lord waved his hand and declared icily, "Kill everyone and spare no one." At the same time, Ethereal Peak's master, Ling Yun, waved his arm and yelled, "The sect is on the brink of its extinction. People, fight with all your strength and protect the final sanctuary of our sect." Everyone from Ethereal Peak knew that there was no other way out for them. Bang! 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 In the back mountain, stone doors were pushed apart by tremendous forces one after another as dozens of terrifying auras appeared. Ethereal Peak's nascent souls who were in seclusion had appeared one after another as well. Under the lead of Sect Master Ling Yun, 100 nascent souls and nearly 1,000 golden cores were mobilized. In terms of numbers, they were comparable to Blood Crow Palace. Their formidable foundation was thoroughly shown. However, due to the stringent requirement process of Ethereal Peak, there were not many foundation establishment cultivators and they amounted to slightly more than 2,000. Once the Great Battle was invoked, their foundation establishment cultivators would definitely be disadvantaged. Of course, the final outcome of the battle was not decided from the foundation establishment battlefield, nor was it decided from the Golden Core and Nascent Soul battlefields. The ultimate challenge was between the Void Reversion experts. Caw, caw. The countless blood crows let out ear-piercing cries, charging towards the Ethereal Peak cultivators like a swarm of locusts. It was startling. All of a sudden, a might aura burst forth from within Ethereal Peak followed by a deafening cry. A figure broke out of seclusion, bearing a head of red hair and exuding a terrifying demonic aura. Although she had an insane might and a sharp gaze, this was a beauty. Senior Crane. Senior Crane has come forth from seclusion. A series of cheers sounded from Ethereal Peak and the masses were overjoyed. The old Immortal Crane looked at the countless incoming blood crows and her eyes shone brightly. A mysterious shockwave spread out from her glabella as she suddenly opened her mouth and shot out a fiery stream of flames. Swoosh! The stream of flame spread out and was hundreds of feet tall, incinerating half the skies. Countless blood crows were turned into ashes without being able to make a single sound. Humph! Blood Crow Palace's lord harumphed coldly and soared into the air. With a single thought, a blood-colored bone staff appeared in his hands with a skull at its tip, emanating a sinister aura. Blood Pattern Curse. Waving his blood-bone staff, the palace lord chanted an unidentifiable incantation and the void surged with a terrifying energy feedback. 2 streams of blood light shot forth from the sockets of the skull. As though it was alive, the skull opened its mouth and shot out a green streak of light. The blood and green light fused into a drop of fresh blood. When the drop of blood arrived above the old Immortal Crane's head, it suddenly exploded and spread into a series of mysterious patterns. Descending slowly, it engulfed the old Immortal Crane. Buzz. Buzz. The blood patterns formed a blood-colored circle of light that caused smoke to form each time it made contact with the old immortal crane's body. Eventually, it corroded the old immortal crane's shirt and a series of burn marks appeared on its fair skin beneath. Caw! The old immortal crane cried and its blood chi burst forth. Instantly, its body and flesh expanded while its bones changed structures as it transformed. Right in front of everyone, it turned into a massive ferocious bird that was dozens of feet in width, ready to fly with its wings at any moment. Resembling an immortal crane, the ferocious bird had a smudge of red on its head and its body was green. A thin, dense layer of flame burned on its body, emitting a scorching heat, and its beak was red and a full 10 feet long. The Blood Crow Palace's lord's expression changed as he murmured softly, "So, your true form is actually a pure-blooded ferocious bird." The old immortal crane soared into the skies and the flames on its body burned brightly, purging away the power of the blood curse. Rising into the clouds with its gigantic body, it looked down at the palace lord on the ground with a murderous intent. "Fufu, you might have been a threat to me at your peak. But now, you're nothing but a beast at the end of your lifespan and is nothing to be feared." The palace lord sneered and leaped up. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared above the 9 heavens into the clouds. That was a height that even nascent souls could not reach. Although golden cores could soar into the skies without the use of any external objects, the truth was that there was a limit to the height they could reach, and it was merely about 100 feet. There was an incredibly strong dermic power between the heaven and earth that restricted cultivators and all living beings immensely. The higher cultivators flew, the greater the pressure they would have to endure. With their essence spirits, nascent souls could greatly resist the restrictions on their bodies set by the heaven and earth and could soar to heights a couple thousand feet high. More than that, one would be in the clouds and their vision and hearing would suffer. At that place where even nascent souls could not reach, only void reversions could fight there. The great battle was invoked beneath Ethereal Peak. Blood Crow Palace's lord and the old immortal crane clashed as well, producing shuddering power shockwaves that attracted the attention of a few void reversions nearby. Those void reversions came from Iridescent Cloud's Palace, True Fire Sect, Southern Mountains Sect and Azure Frost Sect. The armies of the 4 major sects were speeding towards Ethereal Peak under the lead of their void reversion experts. That old beast has sure hidden herself well. To think that she's a ferocious beast of the ancient era, a Baifang. The Baifang was a pure-blooded ferocious beast that did not need to consume food and specialized in the Tao of fire. Legend has it that the Baifang carried the bloodline of the Phoenix race and was extremely ferocious. While the Baifang looked extremely similar to immortal cranes, their difference was that their head was a full feet wide. It's lucky that the Blood Crow Palace's lord is around. Otherwise, the 4 of us might have been destroyed by that old beast instead. Yes, the Baifang is old now. Furthermore, I heard that the Blood Crow Palace's lord belongs to one of the 9 primordial races. Even if the Baifang was at its peak, it might not be a match for this guy. Let's go. Let's head over there first to help the Blood Crow Palace's lord kill that old beast as soon as possible. After conversing, the 4 void reversions soared into the skies and vanished in the blink of an eye. It wouldn't be long before the armies of the other 4 major sects arrived at Ethereal Peak. Chapter 476, Fatal Blow. Chapter 476, Fatal Blow. With the fight between the void reversions taking place, nascent souls from both factions soared into the skies one after another to a height of a few thousand feet tall before breaking out into a battle. At that height, the fight between the nascent souls would not affect the Golden Cores and Foundation Establishment cultivators. Every single attack of a nascent soul possessed the might of the heaven and earth, and it was something that Golden Cores couldn't defend against. As for Golden Cores, they left the ground and flew 100 feet into the skies before they started fighting. Countless spirit arts and flying swords streaked, and there were even golden core phenomenons. On the ground, Foundation establishment cultivators collided intensely like two massive torrents. Blood Crow Palace did not have the advantage in numbers when it came to nascent souls and golden cores. However, they had multiple times the number of Foundation establishment cultivators of Ethereal Peak. The moment the fight began, Ethereal Peak showed signs of defeat on the Foundation establishment battlefield. In recent years, most of Ethereal Peak's paragons of the Foundation establishment realm died in Dongling Valley. The rest, such as Jiqing Tian, Leng Rou, and the others, obtained their own opportunities and left the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty. The remaining Foundation establishment cultivators in the sect had no leader, and the strongest among them was only at 5 Meridian Foundation establishment, with a few others at 4. As for the 9,000-odd Foundation establishment cultivators on Blood Crow Palace's side, there were 2 of them at 6 Meridian Foundation establishment and dozens at 5. In the ancient battlefield, especially at the core regions where battles were plenty, 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were common sight, and only 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators could protect themselves. However, in the territory of Great Zhou, the environment was not as favorable as the ancient battlefield, and it was almost the limit for any cultivator to unlock 6 spirit meridians. Bang! 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 The moment the battle began, Ethereal Peak Foundation establishment cultivators were already showing signs of defeat. There was nothing to compensate for the difference in numbers and strength. The most eye-catching cultivator on the side of Ethereal Peak was an outstanding young girl. This outstanding young girl was not old, and her features were intricate with a straight nose bridge. Her eyes shimmered like diamonds, but her hair was withered, yellow and messy without any luster. This young girl was none other than Nian Qi. After cultivating for less than 2 years, she was already at the peak of Foundation establishment and had already unlocked 3 spirit meridians. It was also because of Nian Qi's presence that the Ethereal Peak Foundation establishment cultivators were not instantly overwhelmed and defeated. Controlling her flying sword with one hand, she wielded a saber in the other and charged into the Blood Crow Palace crowd, cleaving left and right. Initially, back when Nian Qi did not have any spirit qi in her body, she was already able to lift the mystic gold silk armor which weighed a ton. It could be said that she had an innate godly strength. Now that she had entered the path of cultivation, her strength had grown even more, and she was like a tiger who had obtained wings. Although she was only at 3 Meridian Foundation establishment, she could kill 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and even face off against 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Swinging her saber widely, Nian Qi was completely following Su Zimo's previous style without any complicated movements. He was overwhelming everything with brute force. Unable to defend against her, a 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was cut into 2. Gradually, the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators of Blood Crow Palace surrounding Nian Qi increased, and even 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators had targeted her. "Let's join forces and kill that girl first," a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator yelled. Bang! 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 Swoosh! 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 At least 10 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators attacked Nian Qi at the same time. 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators released their spirit arts and flying swords as well, unleashing a flurry of attacks at Nian Qi. Instantly, Nian Qi descended into danger. She had already charged into the depths of the Blood Crow Palace faction a long time ago and was far away from the Ethereal Peak faction. Right now, she was like a helpless leaf floating in a raging sea. Nian Qi did not wish to die. She wanted to continue staying in Ethereal Peak and following her young master. However, she knew that in such a situation where everyone could barely fend for themselves, no one could save her. The only way she could survive was if she fought for herself. Against the attacks that came from all directions, Nian Qi shivered and channeled blood qi with all her might. Gradually, her eyes turned into a mysterious shade of blue, akin to the color of the deep ocean. A terrifying aura exuded from within her. It was as though an ancient power had been awakened. Ah! Roaring into the skies, Nian Qi let out an ear-piercing shriek. Her initially wrinkly hair turned silky smooth, swaying on its own and giving off a bright luster. Although she had nothing beneath her feet, she rose slowly into the air and stood upright. It was like a godly being of the universe with a pair of azure blue eyes and golden dancing hair. Her magnificence was outstanding and blinding. That scene did not cause much of a stir to the golden cores and nascent souls. No matter what, Nian Qi was just a foundation establishment cultivator. While the aura that she suddenly gave off was terrifying and even shuddering, it was not strong enough to threaten the golden cores. However, thousands of feet above the clouds, the expression of Blood Crow Palace's lord who was embroiled in a battle currently changed. His gaze penetrated the voids and landed on Nian Qi. Could it be? The palace lord's eyes shimmered, as if he had recalled something. On the battlefield, just as Nian Qi was about to be drowned by the countless spirit arts and weapons, a burst of energy shot forth from within her. Buzz! The spirit weapons that were arriving from all directions froze in midair. Even the spirit arts shook violently before dissipating. All the Foundation establishment cultivators present were shocked, and they saw that a 3-Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator had managed to defend against the full-powered attacks of 10 5-Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and 2 6-Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. That scene had already surpassed everyone's knowledge. It was a 3-level gap right there. After a momentary pause, all the spirit weapons flew back in reverse and Nian Qi's gaze gradually dimmed. She turned extremely weak and fell from midair, as though she had lost all her strength. Caw, caw. The sound of a crane echoed out as a green streak of light shot by, carrying Nian Qi before retreating at an even faster speed. The one that saved Nian Qi was none other than Little Crane. Ha ha ha. Right then, a series of laughter broke out from the horizons far away. I'm Dao Bing Jing Ming of Iridescent Cloud's Palace. Greetings, Blood Crow Palace's Lord. I'm Dao Bing Liao Yuan of True Fire Sect, here to assist the Palace Lord. I'm Dao Bing Lao Yang of Southern Mountains Sect. I'm Dao Bing Han Ming of Azure Frost Sect, here to help the Palace Lord kill that old beast. For terrifying auras surged over and climbed thousands of feet into the clouds instantly, surrounding the old immortal crane. The ethereal peak cultivators felt their hearts sink. The immortal crane was old and it did not have a clear advantage against Blood Crow Palace's lord. But now, there were 4 more void reversion experts. Spirit vessels sped over from the horizon with a murderous intent. Not long after, cultivators of the other 4 sects arrived. There were a full 200 nascent souls and 2,000 golden cores combined from the other 4 sects. Together, there were more than 10,000 Foundation establishment cultivators. The insertion of such a massive amount of power into the battlefield was almost a fatal blow for Ethereal Peak. Initially, Ethereal Peak was holding its ground on the nascent soul and golden core battlefields. But now, all 4 battlefields of Ethereal Peak had fallen into an encirclement and could collapse at any moment to be entirely annihilated. Almost at the same time, a deafening bang sounded from a cave abode within Ethereal Peak. A figure had broken out of seclusion. Chapter 477, Desperate Situation. Chapter 477, Desperate Situation. With the addition of the other 4 major sects, the situation of the battle changed. The old immortal crane was fighting 1 against 5 and spread its wings, causing gusts of wind to howl and the clouds to shift endlessly. Dermic powers filled the skies as it roared in anger, fighting with its fullest strength. Although the old immortal crane was aged, it still had the remaining dominance as a pure-blooded ferocious bird. Shoo! 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 It released a shocking demonic skill, and tens of thousands of feathered wings shot forth from its body. Burning with scarlet flames, each feathered wing was like an apocalyptic spear. Shooting forward fiercely, they tore through the voids and left countless holes. Let a blood curse mirror be formed with my blood. The Blood Crow Palace's lord bit his fingertip and flicked out a drop of fresh blood. Waving his bone staff, he guided that drop of blood and drew an obscure arc in midair. Chanting an incantation, he created a mirror of blood water swiftly before him. The flurry of red feathered wings shot over and created blood waves as they collided against the surface of the mirror before their flames were extinguished. The other 4 void reversions did not dare to be careless and defended with all their might. Instantly, dermic powers surged and runes appeared, shaking the world as endless light burst forth. The void was illuminated and it seemed as though the firmaments were collapsing. That demonic technique had expended almost all of the old immortal crane's remaining life essence. Its gaze dimmed slightly, no longer as sharp as before. Not far away from Ethereal Peak, an army of cultivators clad in armor appeared in the void. All of them stood upright in midair wielding long spears, looking stoic. It was an army of golden cores. A carriage was escorted in the middle of the army. In front of the carriage stood 2 people, a man and a woman. The middle-aged man wore yellow robes and frowned deeply. Looking at the great battle above the clouds, he shook his head and sighed. Swear, as you wished, I've brought you here. You can see for yourself now that it's going to be tough for Ethereal Peak to avoid this calamity. The man and woman were the Emperor of Great Zhou and Ji Yaoxue. Ji Yaoxue could not help but ask, Father, why do you refuse to lend them a hand? Our Great Zhou dynasty clearly has more than one void reversion to back us up. The Emperor shook his head in silence. Ji Yaoxue continued, Furthermore, I heard that there's a patriarch in Great Zhou who is still alive and he is a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. The Dharma characteristic realm came after the Void Reversion realm. Those that are in the Void Reversion realm gain the title of Dao Being while those in the Dharma characteristic realm gain the title of Dao Lord. After a moment of silence, the Emperor said softly, Swear, actually, the Patriarch was the one who made the decision to not interfere. Why? Ji Yaoxue was in disbelief as she questioned, as a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord, can't the Patriarch beat a Void Reversion Dao Being? What are you guys scared of? Heis. The Emperor gave a deep sigh. If the Patriarch comes forth, he can naturally suppress the Blood Crow Palace's Lord. However, the thing is that this guy's background is extremely touchy. He is one of the primordial 9 races. So what if he's one of the primordial 9 races? Weren't they defeated by the ancient emperors of the human race in the primordial era all the same? Ji Yaoxue could not understand. As though he recalled something, a hint of fear flickered through the depths of the emperor's eyes as he shook his head. The might of the primordial 9 races is far beyond what you can imagine. If we really anger the experts of the primordial 9 races, notwithstanding the Great Zhou dynasty, even the entire north region of Tianhuang mainland would experience a catastrophe. Back then, the Patriarch witnessed and had been through a similar catastrophe personally. Pausing for a moment, the Emperor did not continue on that topic. Let's hope that Su Zimo has already left Ethereal Peak. On the other side, 2 outstanding women with voluptuous figures stood within the ancient forest. One of them was older but there were no signs of aging on her face. Instead, she gave off a mature and charming aura from head to toe. The other was dressed in a long pink dress and wore a veil, looking like she was a young girl. Auntie Gu, since Su Zimo hasn't shown himself yet, I suppose he must have already left and is no longer at Ethereal Peak, the girl in pink said with joy. The 2 of them were the chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House, Gu Shi, and the pure maiden of the fiend sects, Demonis Ji. That had better be the case. Given the circumstances, he would die for sure if he appeared. Gu Shi's expression was unchanged. The Blood Crow Palace's lord is someone from the witch race, and they are one of the primordial 9 races. The impact left on the cultivation world after that catastrophe 10,000 years ago was way too deep. Let alone the patriarch of the great Zhou dynasty, even those of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects would be cautious and not want to provoke the primordial 9 races. Demoness Ji shook her head. That's not for sure. That senior of the Fiend sect definitely fears nothing. Pausing for a moment, Demoness Ji tugged at Gu Shi's sleeves and asked, Auntie Gu, haven't you sent the message yet? What did that senior say? What can he say? Gu Shi pouted her lips. He is cold and merciless. When he heard my message, he didn't even have any reaction mentally. Don't pin your hopes on him. At Ethereal Peak, the battle was intensifying. On the Nascent Soul battlefield, Sect Master Ling Yun was already at perfected Nascent Soul realm and was a step away from Void Reversion realm. With his terrifying combat strength, he fought at the front and held on bitterly. It was a complete defeat for the Golden Core and Foundation Establishment battlefields. Nian Qi was exhausted and frightfully pale. Lying on Little Crane, it was difficult for her to recover in a short period of time. The Foundation Establishment cultivators of Blood Crow Palace and the other 4 major sects charged over like a relentless torrent, rushing at the Ethereal Peak Foundation Establishment faction repeatedly. During this period of time, some of the smaller sects and itinerant cultivators of Great Zhou seized the opportunity to take part in the battlefield, ready to take advantage of the situation as well. Without Nian Qi, the Ethereal Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators were retreating repeatedly, leaving behind a trail of corpses. Blood flowed like a river and it was extremely tragic. The situation on the Golden Core battlefield was even more pressing. Golden Cores of Ethereal Peak were dying repeatedly. True Fire Sect Sima Ji controlled 4 flaming flying swords that streaked through the crowd endlessly, leaving streams of scorching sword chi. Where's that little bastard, Su Zimo? Are you still going to continue hiding? Now that the outcome was set, Sima Ji roared in laughter gleefully. Perfected being Tsang Lang controlled his flying sword and his long, narrow eyes shone with a cold glint. The entire Ethereal Peak will have to die together just for the sake of a Foundation Establishment cultivator, Su Zimo. His remark caused the Ethereal Peak faction, which was already getting defeated steadily, to turn even messier. To hell with you. The disheveled old man had a fiery temper and cursed. However, immediately after, his slight distraction caused him to suffer a gash on the wound from perfected being Tsang Lang and blood flowed like a stream. Xian Yi summoned his hexagonal sword formation and had to give it his best before he could rescue the disheveled old man. Fufu, open your eyes properly and take a look. Perfected being Tsang Lang pointed at the Foundation Establishment battlefield beneath their feet and sneered, Ethereal Peak's Foundation Establishment cultivators are almost completely dead. Xian Yi and the disheveled old man's hearts skipped a beat. On the ground, Nian Qi's group retreated step after step and were already at the base of the mountain. Of the 2,000 Foundation Establishment cultivators, there were only a few hundred left battling bitterly right now. All of the disciples carried injuries and panted heavily, they were almost at their limits. Swoosh! 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 Right then, 10 streaks of dark light shot forward from the back of the mountain, sending forth a shuddering impact. As the 10 dark lights streaked through, a terrifying air current surged and smashed the tiles on the ground. The mud was overturned and 10 long ravines were formed. Fast as lightning, a green-robed cultivator surged over with a murderous intent. Flapping his spirit wings furiously, he wielded a gigantic moon-colored bow and exuded a torrential aura. Chapter 478, Extreme Foundation Establishment, the Second Human Emperor. Chapter 478, Extreme Foundation Establishment, the second human emperor. The 10 dark lights arrived instantly and shot into the crowd viciously. Poof! 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 Flashes of blood appeared. The 10 dark lights were so strong that their momentums were still ferocious even after penetrating the bodies of more than 10 cultivators. They were unstoppable. The terrifying power of the dark lights even surged through some of the cultivators after passing through them, causing them to explode with their limbs flying everywhere. All the ethereal peak cultivators witnessed the massive torrent formed by more than 20,000 Foundation Establishment cultivators stop just because of 10 dark lights that were streaking through. Within the torrent, there were 10 lines filled with countless corpses and endless blood. The cultivators of Blood Crow Palace, the other 4 major sects and multiple small sects had swarmed over. Coupled with itinerant cultivators from all over the place, they were way too densely packed. The 10 dark lights were extremely lethal. There were at least a few hundred Foundation Establishment cultivators who died on the spot. With more than 20,000 cultivators on the Blood Crow Palace's faction, the few hundred dead Foundation Establishment cultivators could not be considered as a great amount of damage. However, it created a trauma within everyone's hearts. Su Zimo. Someone with a keen eye exclaimed upon recognizing the identity of the green-robed cultivator. No wonder the dark lights were so terrifyingly lethal. Hurry, look! The bow in his hand is a perfect spirit weapon. Indeed. Many Foundation Establishment cultivators were jealous and were raring to give it a shot. They had heard long ago that Su Zimo was the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou, and the lousiest weapons in his storage bag were supreme-grade spirit weapons. In fact, he even possessed perfect spirit weapons. The rumors were true. Many Golden Cores turned to look from the Golden Core battlefield. On the sect competition, Su Zimo had made a name for himself, and how could anyone not know or have not heard of the title of the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou? True Fire Sect Sima Ji's eyes lit up as he roared in laughter. Good, good. Su Zimo, you've got guts to appear. I'll have you pay for my disciple's death. Perfected being Tsang Lang's long, narrow eyes were locked on Su Zimo. Looking down from above, he sneered, Su Zimo, so what if you manage to join Ethereal Peak? You still can't escape death. A few years ago, back in Pingyang Town, should have killed you together with that beast. No matter how you struggle, you can't fight against the cycle of your fate. Su Zimo's gaze was indifferent as he stood on midair and surveyed the surroundings. His gaze seemed to contain an enormous might that could overwhelm and overpower everything. The Foundation Establishment cultivators on the side of Blood Crow Palace felt their hearts clench when they met with Su Zimo's eyes. That person gave off a frightening aura. That was an aura that was built from endless bloodshed and countless corpses. In the ancient battlefield, even many paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend cultivation sects died in his hands. Since the strongest cultivators here were only at 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment at best, none of them could withstand Su Zimo's aura. When he saw the corpses of Ethereal Peak disciples on the ground, Su Zimo's killing intent spewed out of his eyes. Die! Putting away his moon concealment bow, Su Zimo's sleeves waved and 18 supreme-grade flying swords appeared. However, all 18 of them disappeared in the blink of an eye, forming ripples in the void, as though fishes were gliding through water. Not good. That's Ethereal Peak's secret skill. Everyone, watch out. Arg! Someone screamed tragically. Sword light flashed and a few 5 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators died on the spot without any chance to fight back at all. Condense. A 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivator crushed multiple protection talismans and released High Sect's secret skill. Right after, he took out a supreme-grade defensive shield, used it to block in front of him. Clang! The flying sword did not pause at all upon colliding with his supreme-grade shield, causing the latter to explode immediately. Poof! 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 Against Su Zimo's flying sword, his secret skills and protection talismans were akin to paper and were disintegrated instantly. A flash of blood appeared and a gigantic head fell down neatly. A 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was dead. The Blood Crow Palace faction was in chaos and the expressions of many cultivators changed. How could that be? They were both supreme-grade spirit weapons, but why did the other party's flying sword destroy the shield immediately? Unless... Many cultivators turned over instinctively. Pust. In midair, underneath Su Zimo's green robes, spirit meridians shone one after another in a bedazzling manner, wrapping around his body like metal chains. 1, 2, 3. 9 spirit meridians. Was it a hallucination? Many cultivators rubbed their eyes and looked again before gasping. Pust. There were a full 9 spirit meridians. Even 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators would be able to barbarically suppress the entire Foundation establishment battlefield, let alone a 9 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. As Su Zimo stood on midair, his Dantian spirit seed churned rapidly and rich spirit energy surged through his 9 spirit meridians. He was like a god of the universe with a mighty aura. Many cultivators were aghast. The Foundation establishment cultivators were not the only ones, even the Golden Cores and Nascent Souls were shocked when they saw what was going on. In the territory of Great Zhou, it has been 1,000 years since there was even an 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. As for 9 Meridian Foundation establishment, ever since the ancient era, there had never been a second person to reach that realm apart from the human emperor. The legends are true. The 9th Spirit Meridian can truly be unlocked. Extreme Foundation Establishment, the second human emperor. A wary look flashed through perfected being Tsang Lang's eyes, followed by a feeling of trepidation. It was lucky that Ethereal Peak was on the brink of annihilation and Su Zimo wouldn't be able to escape death. Otherwise, if that lad were to grow further, who in the territory of Great Zhou would be able to stop him? He is the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou, and now, he's even at the Extreme Foundation establishment realm. Once he forms a core, he would definitely develop a phenomenon as well. Sect Master Ling Yun sighed internally. Such was the cruelty of fate. They could only blame the sect for being unlucky. If they had not met with such a calamity, with talents such as Ji Qingtian, Leng Rou, and the others, they would definitely rise to be the #1 sect of the Great Zhou dynasty. As for Su Zimo, his accomplishments would even be more limitless. In fact, he might even be able to lead Ethereal Peak to become one of the top factions of Tianhuang Mainland. Alas! The Blood Crow Palace's lord narrowed his eyes and his killing intent deepened. His personal feud with Su Zimo aside, the fact that this lad was at Extreme Foundation establishment meant that he had to be killed. A second human emperor must not be allowed to appear on Tianhuang Mainland. The 18 supreme-grade flying swords streaked through the crowd and none of the Foundation establishment cultivators could defend at all. It was a complete massacre. The massive flood formed by more than 20,000 Foundation establishment cultivators was punctured and pushed back by Su Zimo single-handedly. Everyone from Ethereal Peak was reinvigorated. At that moment, Su Zimo flapped his spirit wings and rose into the air. He was actually arriving at the Golden Core battlefield 100 feet high. Zimo, hurry back down. The disheveled old man shouted hurriedly when he saw that. The fight between Foundation establishment cultivators would only take place on the ground and no one would soar into the skies 100 feet high. Given the chaotic battlefield, the flying swords and spirit arts of Golden Cores carried an absolutely destructive power against Foundation establishment cultivators. To everyone, Su Zimo's move was complete suicide. Ha ha ha. Composing himself, Sima Ji roared into laughter. Even if you're at Extreme Foundation establishment, you're still just a Foundation establishment cultivator. Everything is futile before you form a core, and you'll never ever be able to experience the power of being at Golden Core Realm. It's been a long time since I've experienced the feeling of murdering a talent. Perfected being Tsang Lang smiled gently and said coldly, Su Zimo, thank you for granting me that feeling today. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.